Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Tell It to the Marines by Tsume Yuki. Because sometimes a tale is too tall not to tell. Even if no one will ever believe her, this isn't Riskua's first shot at life. It is her first time as the big sister of the nuisance that is Monkey D. Luffy, however. Self-insert, adios.
He's a sap. Sabo chortles beside her, a wide grin on his face, and all the misadventures and clothing theft from the summer island forgotten in the face of this exciting news. Because ASLR. Ace had got goddamn ASLR tattooed on his arm instead of the original ASCE. Which, come to think about it, it was kind of obvious he probably wouldn't get ASCE, what with Sabo still kicking. Or rather, Sabo avoiding the incident that would have led to Ace believing him dead. Still, ASLR, she'd have expected the freckled male to get his name tattooed upon his flesh, just minus the addition of the S. Instead, clear as day, black against the tanned curve of his muscular arm, Ace has ASLR inked across his skin. The S is still crossed out, still a reference to Sabo's pirate flag. Maybe because he left the dream of becoming a pirate behind and instead started on his calling as a revolutionary, who knows? Well, Ace obviously, but still, Sabo. We both know Ace is secretly soft as a melt-in-the-middle chocolate pudding, she points out, but even she can't help the grin that's etched its way onto her face. Ace's tattoo is a blatant tribute to them, to Sabo and Luffy and her, a nod that no matter where he is, he's thinking of them. Sabo's right, he is a sap. But he's their sap. And a white-beard pirate, huh? Do you think he's happy? I think we both know Ace doesn't back down from a fight for anything, so he must have joined of his own accord. Taking one last glance at the bounty poster, Riskua puts it down in favor of reaching for the plateful of bacon, taking 4 slices for herself before passing it on to Sabo. The mess hall is abuzz with activity, various members of the Revolutionary Army going about their daily business, all digging into the food that's on offer. While they're not swimming in cash, it'd be a lie to say the revolution is short on supplies. They've got their own food sources here on Baltigo, run by the sparse population of locals, so they're never in need of consumable goods. Which is wonderful news because no one here actually restricts their eating habits. Even Dragon devours his fair share in his own serious way. There are some commodities they don't really have access to though, and one of the compromises that Riskua had been forced to make was substituting fresh orange juice for apple juice. Which, as her lips wrap around the glass rim, brings her onto a rather heavy topic. She knows what is happening on the Konami Islands, she knows what Arlong is doing. The question is, should she interfere? Because Luffy needs his navigator, he'd probably have died before reaching the Grand Line without Nami. And even though Riskua can work her way around with a compass, Grand Line navigation is a whole other skill set, one she herself doesn't possess nor has any inclination to develop. Luffy needs his navigator. Only Riskua can remember what it feels like to have the power stripped completely from you, to know your family's in danger and being willing to do anything at all, to get help. She'd all but crawled to Dragon, giving away more than she'd wanted in order to prompt him into saving Ace and Luffy. She'd been helpless when that fire raged, and those few hours where she'd been unsure if her most precious people were safe. She'd been completely and utterly powerless, relying upon a stronger person to save those she cared for. It had hurt so much, knowing she wasn't enough to go save Ace and Luffy, and that sensation had lasted but a few hours. She can only begin to imagine what Nami must feel, having lived in those conditions for years. Swallowing hard, Riskua settles her fork down beside her now empty plate, grimacing. If she ignored the situation in Konami, willfully ignores it, then she's pretty sure she'll never be able to look Nami in the eyes. Not when she could have helped her. That woman could potentially be her future crewmate, and Riskua cannot just let her continue to suffer. Not when she can do something about it. Maybe she'll be the dragon to Nami's Riskua this time. Mind made up, Riskua rises from her chair, pulling the napkin from her lap and setting it on her empty plate. I need to talk to Dragon-san, she says in way of explanation to Sabo. She might be screwing up Luffy and Nami's future meet and greet, but given the circumstances, well, Riskua might not have Luffy's magnetism, but by God will she try. If she's going to help Nami out, then she'll just have to catch the girl and reel her into the Straw Hats Pirates herself while she's at it. Your luck is ridiculous. Sabs, this is my first instance of significant luck, and quite probably my last. Riskua had ran a hand through her, black, it looks so wrong black, hair, rolling her eyes behind those goggles. Everyone else in the base thinks she's just incredibly short-sighted and that's why she insists on wearing those goggles. Sabo though, Sabo knows it's because she's got startling eyes, the ones that make you freeze in your step, just for a moment. Hidden behind those purple-tinted goggles, they're dulled to a muted brown. A warm brown all the same, but still a brown. Given she's shaken off her most noticeable traits, given she no longer sports the fantastic red hair or the haunting yellow eyes, she looks like a completely different person. Hell, she could probably walk right by Luffy, and maybe even Ace, and he doubts she'd be recognized. But the point stands. I don't want it, and with Ace now a devil fruit user too, I figured you might want it instead. It had tasted awful. Like shame and disgust and jealousy had all taken on physical form in that one nasty fruit. He hadn't really believed Luffy when the boy said it was the worst thing he'd ever eaten, because by God has Sabo seen that kid inhale some questionable stuff. But every word his younger brother spoke was unquestionably the truth. Oh boy does Sabo regret the flavor of that fruit. As if losing the ability to swim wasn't enough, that taste would be enough to put anybody off a second bite. A good thing, given the fact that no devil fruit user has ever survived eating a second fruit. It's all enough to scare anyone away. The taste hadn't left his mouth for hours afterwards, no matter what he'd eaten. Still, it's a pretty cool fruit, better than becoming a rubber man, that's for sure. Lips tilting up in a grin, Sabo looks down at his little pack, inspecting the contents with a focused eye. He's going back to East Blue once again, this time to liberate an island, with Riskua, and I am not being left out of this, Koala snaps, standing at the threshold of his room with her arms folded across her generous chest. Her cheeks are puffed up with air and flushed, eyebrows furrowed. She looks like an adorable baby bird, one of the real fluffy ones that they never ate back on Dawn Island. Because they were too cute, there wasn't too much meat on them and, of course, it'd have taken forever to get all those feathers plucked. Koala, number Sabo. Arlong was a sun pirate, so I had to be there for this. Sabo might not have spent years besides this woman like he has Riskua, but he knows the set of those feet all the same. She won't back down from this argument, and if they try to leave without her, she'll just sneak after them, which would put all of them at risk. Fine. Defeated Sabo slouches forwards, dragging one hand down the side of his face as Koala claps her hands in excitement. I knew you'd see reason, which is why I've already packed up my things, of course she has. We're catching a lift from the supply run, but once we're in East Blue, it'll just be the three of us. Arlong is a former Grand Line pirate, he's not going to be a pushover, that's for sure. But he's not going to be impossible to take down. He spent 6 years in East Blue, which means his abilities will have stagnated without the constant challenge that is the Grand Line. 6 years with no serious fights, he's going to be out of practice. Certainly he won't be expecting the three of them, Koala, who knows fisherman's karate, Saba's devil fruit, and then Riskua with her daggers and much more impressive proficiency with hockey. This shouldn't prove too difficult. So we're just waiting on Riskua? No you're not, I'm here. Skidding to a halt just outside of his room, Riskua flicks the black bangs back from her face, dabbing at the blood that's decorating the lower half of her face. While that concealment hockey sure promises some wonderful things for the revolution, Riskua spends a great deal of her time testing it now, meaning, did someone open a door into your face again? She scowls, nose scrunching up which only permits a fresh flow of blood that she's forced to stem. No, it's a pitiful denial, accompanied by a pouting frown. Yeah, someone undoubtedly opened a door into her face again. Well let's get going. Try not to leave a red trail for the Marines to follow. Oh you're hilarious, Sabo. East Blue is upon the cusp of summer when they arrive. Slouched over the side of their little boat, Riskua's eyes are downcast, focused upon the dark waves as she wrings her hands back and forth, arms leaning on their vessel's wooden edge. The muscles of her shoulders are tense, her jaw set, preparing to go into battle. Despite the fact they are about to burst into action under the revolution's flag, Sabo's chest feels light, his breath's coming with an ease he could grow used to. He feels confident. A year with the revolutionaries, and he's only ever had that one mission go wrong. Even then it hadn't been a failure. Sabo might have come away with a few burns for it, but he's not about to give up, to go crawl under a rock just because he got a little scarred. He'll face everything that's thrown at him, and he'll walk away victorious. Are you going to be okay, Koala? You and Arlong have some kind of history, right? He's worried about his friend. While he doesn't know the full details of Koala's past, he'd have to have been blind to miss the huge marking upon the woman's back when they went skinny dipping. Knowledgeable enough to know of the Sun Pirates, Sabo finds himself with more questions than answers. The Sun Pirates are a bunch of fishermen, and to his knowledge, they have never once taken on a human member of the crew. Koala's back is a clear indicator otherwise. Sabo's not a lazy man. He's done his research on what they're up against, and he knows Arlong used to be a Sun Pirate too. Back before the famous Fisher Tiger, one of Sabo's personal heroes, was killed by Marines. God, what Sabo wouldn't have given to have met that guy. Attacking Mariajoy takes more than guts. It's astonishing and unbelievable. That guy would have made the best revolutionary, that's for sure. We do. I can't say I'm surprised that he's still being so horrible to humans. Captain Tiger. He wanted good relations between fishermen and humans, something Arlong isn't even attempting. I owe it to Captain Tiger to stop him, in the very least. The grave expression upon Koala's face is one Sabo seldom sees her wear. The grim twist to her mouth. Eyes a dark navy absent of their usual sparkle of mischief. It doesn't look right. Licking slowly at his bottom lip, Sabo sucks in a deep breath, eyes on the quickly approaching land. Well, this is the island where we'll find Arlong Park. The closest settlement is called Kokoyasi Village. We'll dock there. Riskua, get some rope. Koala, raise the flag. It's only the second time that Sabo's rode into port with the red slash of fabric whipping about through the air, but it still provokes the same amount of bubbling excitement, of burning anticipation. Sweat from his hands makes grasping the rudder more difficult than it should be, but Sabo's not really in the mood to wipe them on the fabric of his pants. Wetting his lips, the blonde locks the rudder in place, allowing their little boat to drift up towards the dock as he grabs hold of the rope. Now aware he'll sink like a stone the second he's in the water, Sabo is a hell of a lot more aware of the great expanse of blue around him. It doesn't matter that Koala and Riskua are here to pull him out if he needs them. He does not want to experience just how badly the sea will affect him now that he is a devil fruit user. As such, the former noble waits until the distance between the ship and the dock is practically nothing before casually stepping up onto the stationary surface. Catch! Snatching the line of rope Riskua throws him, Sabo swiftly ties their little ship with secure knots, long fingers working with ease. Ah, sir, you don't. Turning to face the one who addresses him, Sabo raises an eyebrow, reaching for his pocket to pull out his own goggles. Not the ones that rest atop his head, but the ones he uses to a little identity protection. Yes. Sabo visibly perks up, head tilting to a side as he leans slightly towards the man that addresses him. There's scary fishermen here. A boy, brown hair, round eyes, young, peers out from behind the man's leg, who's quick to push him protectively behind him once again. Sabo, stay quiet, but he is right, sir. The fisherman here. It's okay, we're well aware of the fisherman, Sabo hurriedly interrupts, holding a hand out to his side. His offering is accepted by Koala, who uses his extended limb to steady herself as she steps onto the dock beside him, Riskua following a moment afterwards. It's actually why we're here. We're with the Revolutionary Army. Riskua butts him before the man can come to the wrong conclusions. From the fumbling and the way the man's eyebrows squish together over his nose, it's clear he has little to no idea what they're talking about. Just how much information are these people getting of the outside world? In the years since Sabo has joined, the movement has grown tenfold and become quite the pain in the world government's side, and they'll only continue to grow. A military force against the suppression of the people by the world government and the Tenryubito. We liberate enslaved islands and people, like this one. There it is. The naked hope. The man tries to suppress it, but it's like leading a dehydrated horse to water. It doesn't even need the push, the desire to drink is already there. You're here to To hopefully kick the Arlong pirates out of here. Take their captain into custody, certainly. Because there's no way the Marines haven't known about this. Which means Arlong must have something on them. Even if he's not bribing, threatening higher-ups, having even one foothold in that door would be a great help to the revolutionaries. Now if you'll excuse us, we have a fight to start. Trekking through the village, no one can see the rampant poverty more than he. He who grew up surrounded by cold luxury. These people may be oppressed, but they are so warm. This is exactly what Sabo is fighting to protect. He's fighting to free people just like this. Every step pumps him up, gets his blood roaring, his heart beating, has his stomach fluttering that little bit more. He's eager to get on with everything, and from the strong eye contact they share during their quick glances at each other, Riskua and Koala feel the same way. The doors to Arlong Park are wide open, and as Riskua closes her eyes for a second, Sabo comes to a halt, impatiently tapping one finger against the pipe slung over his back. I can sense a strong aura about 5 minutes away. Arlong must be making rounds on the island or something. If he really focuses, Sabo can sense it too, even if it's like looking for a star in a foggy night sky. Maybe to Riskua it's like a candle in the dark, but his hockey is nowhere near as good as hers. Sabo's not going to pretend otherwise. Well, let's go set up his welcome home party then, the blonde quips, pulling the pipe over his shoulders and brandishing it at the fishmen that are only just starting to take note of their very bold, very defiant appearance. I thought you'd never ask. The first one that comes as Sabo is knocked flying by a swing of his pipe, and as he completes the full arc with his weapon of choice there's a moment all. It's well known that fishmen are 10 times stronger than a regular old human. Yet Sabo just sent one flying with what appears to be a simple backhand. Of course they don't know he's empowered his limbs with hockey, but it's all for a good show. Who's next? Leveling his pipe towards the group, Sabo feels a burning grin spread across his face as he fails to give the opposition time to answer, charging forwards instead. He can see Koala and Riskua from the corner of his eyes, drawing level with him before they're upon their opponents. He doesn't get much chance to really watch them fight, just a quick flash of fishman karate here and limbs dipped black with hockey over there. He's too busy plowing through the grunts. And they have to be the grunts. Sabo highly doubts any of these guys were sun pirates. Fresh recruits? Well, he'll never have a better time to test things than right now. Twisting his pipe behind his back, Sabo crouches low and exhales. The resulting blast of gale force wind mows down lines of fishmen just as one bullet passes right through Sabo's body, a wisp of air reforming into the would-be site of impact. Dragon's breath. He'll call that move Dragon's breath. What? I ate the bow fruit, so now I'm a windman. It feels good to say it, to acknowledge he has this awesome power aloud. He and Ace are back on level footing, both logia. Though fire's flashier, Sabo's completely enamored with the properties of his own fruit. For years he dreamed of it, but now he is literally free as the wind itself. As long as he avoids Seastone, he cannot be contained. It's perfection. We are the Revolutionary Army, Sabo declares, one hand resting proudly upon his hip while the few pirates that remain standing stare dumbly at him. And we are here to free these islands. Koala just puts down the last fishman with a gracefully chop when Arlong returns. He's a large being and his epithet doesn't lie. That nose is rather saw-like. He's got 2 other fishmen with him, so at least the numbers are even now. Huh? What's this? To the right of Arlong, an octopus fishman gawks at the sight before him, eyes slingshotting back and forth from his downed brethren to the 3 of them. Sabo allows a pleasant smile to plaster across his face, even though he doesn't feel all that friendly. These are beings that have willingly suppressed others, for no reason other than they can. He can't find the willpower to drum up any kind of mercy for them. Which is exactly why he's a revolutionist. Despite the years that have gone by, the second that Arlong's eyes land upon Koala, instant recognition sparks through them. It's enough to have Sabo stepping forwards, sucking his cheeks in and fixing the fishman with a stern stare. I'll be your opponent, Arlong. That is, unless you feel you can only win against a girl. Mentally he resigns himself to being smacked atop the head when this is over, all for implying that, just because they're girls, Riskua and Koala cannot handle themselves. That it makes them weaker than him, because it doesn't. But it does rile Arlong up something fierce. A pitiful human like you? You're nothing. And then he's upon Sabo. Swinging his pipe up, Sabo deflects the first blow, feeling his arms shake from the power behind it. He can see Koala go for Ray Fishman, leaving Riskua to descend upon the octopus one that wields blades, her own daggers flashing in the sunlight. It's almost a shame that Sabo won't get to watch them deal with their opponents because it would surely be a show. Instead, he's already far too busy dealing with his own. Arlong's power is a lot easier to deal with when Sabo begins utilizing his haki, but he's very conscious of the constrictions upon that. He doesn't want to risk running out mid-fight, so he's going to have to be smart about using it. Ducking back from another blow, Sabo falls into a sidewards roll, pipe swiping out for Arlong's legs. As expected of a former Grand Line pirate, he jumps right over the half-hearted attack. Coming up from his tuck and roll, Sabo flicks his own hand forwards and lets his devil fruit do its thing. Hurricane Hand, the first move he'd ever tried with his powers, kind of a homage to Ace, blasts forwards. Howling winds slamming into Arlong's sides and sending him toppling back. He slams into the main building, crashing right through the wall and continuing onwards. Sabo dives after him, sprinting past the octopus fish man that attempts to go for him but is blocked by a concealed Riskua. From the Sun Pirate's tattoo on his head he's undoubtedly experienced, but it's hard to fight someone who can hide from your senses. Reaching the site of impact, Sabo swears as a full set of sharp teeth lodge themselves into his shoulder, clearly fired from his opponent and coated in haki. A devil fruit user? You humans are pathetic. I'm a Grand Line pirate? Even as he says it though, Sabo can feel the level of haki in those teeth and it's nothing impressive. Out of the two of them, Sabo has the edge with that particular power. He's not here to play around. Dust Devil. The wind whips up, tearing through Arlong Park, localized above the building Arlong is no doubt still hiding in. It's difficult, using haki and his devil fruit powers at the same time, to the point where Sabo can only really switch into his observation for a second. It's still enough to confirm that Arlong has been swept up in his hostile weather phenomenon. There's the beginning of a headache starting to spark behind Sabo's brow, but he forces it down, forces his focus on the winds he now commands. It's the greatest power trip, being able to dictate the very air around him, to have it sharpen until it will cut like a blade, to wield it like the blunt force of a hammer. It batters Arlong again and again, attack after attack in the same tempo as the throbbing in Sabo's injured shoulder. He's probably going overboard, but right now he couldn't care less. All he can think about is how helpless he felt when under the control of his noble parents, how powerless he felt. How these people must be feeling that too, the despair of being unable to do nothing, unable to protect themselves. The wind roars louder. By the time they're done, the entire place is trashed. Arlong's arm has been amputated by Sabo's cutting winds. His skin color faded from blood loss, enough that he's unconscious from it all. Sitting upon her own defeated victim, Koala has a large bruise over one cheekbone but a proud smile on her face, her opponent bound and ready to be brought in for questioning. Riskua is all on her own. She's wiping blood from her daggers with a ragged piece of cloth, which upon closer inspection matches the matter of one downed fishman's tattered shirt, while she stares down past her wrinkling nose to her torso, which is caked in what appears to be ink. Sabo grimaces in sympathy. Yeah, that's gonna be hell to get out. So, are we done here? I think we're done here, Riskua agrees, making no mention of her lack of an opponent as she slides her daggers home into their sheaths. Slowly, favoring one foot over the other, she approaches Koala, the tension bleeding from her form as she moves. Now that the fight's over and done with, Sabo has to admit that he's feeling pretty exhausted too. He's not used his devil fruit so much before, nor has he ever really been in such a furious battle. Not one-on-one anyway. Right. Let's get back to the village then. They stay in Kokoyashi village for a whole week, having packed Arlong and all his fellows on the revolutionary ship when it stopped by the port 4 days after the battle. The fishman pirate had been spitting mad to awaken and find himself clapped in irons he couldn't break free from. It had taken a lot of sweet words from Sabo to make sure the villagers didn't take their revenge upon the former pirate captain, Koala helpfully insisting that it did not only further the hatred between their species, but that the Revolutionary Army would be grateful about being able to interrogate the fishman-OND methods of handling the Marines. After a week of constant partying, it had been a rather mournful journey back towards the Grand Line, even if they'd had to stop at Logatown to gather supplies, all under the guise of a merchant vessel. With falsified documents proclaiming them to have the Marine's approval, of course. Biggest nuisance to avoid while we're here? Riskua asks, eyes half closed and fingers laced together at the back of her skull. She looks pretty relaxed, head of black hair tipped back so she can better enjoy the sunlight that graces her face. Marine Captain Smoker. He's only been stationed here 5 months, but not one pirate has managed to get past him yet. Huh, Riskua breathes, chewing her lip and eyeing him from her peripherals. I guess it's a good thing we're not pirates then. That little smile on her lips is cute as anything, and Sabo slings one arm over her shoulder, forcibly jostling her hands from where they were resting behind her head. Well, you're not a pirate yet, while I'm something greater. Greater my ass, Riskua scoffs lightly, driving her elbow into his sides. It has to be coated in hockey, otherwise it'd have just ended up meeting nothing but soft gusts of air, which is cool as hell. It's just a shame his intangibility is useless in the face of his best friend and her hockey-using ways. Where are we going anyway? I'm gonna get a tattoo. The abrupt confession has Sabo pauses, missing a step, and if it weren't for the fact he already had an arm over Riskua's shoulders he'd probably have fallen flat on his face. What? Brilliant yellow meet his gaze from behind thick purple lenses, Riskua's lips lifting up in a sheepish smile, cheeks flushing even as her temples crinkle with laugh lines. Ace isn't the only sap among us. Oh, that's actually a good idea. Sabo likes it. A nod to their bond, to the childhood they all shared. Let's hope they've got time to tattoo 2 total losers then. Riskua grins at him, all bright eyes and bubbled demeanor as she links her arm through his. It's a good thing neither of them have much of a problem with the other showing some skin if they're getting them done together then. Returning to Kokoyashi village, she had a lot of expectations. Finding her hometown in the middle of a festival was not among them. Nami can barely summon up the willpower to step off her little boat. The bag and bags of berry by her feet are just a distant presence now in her dazed state. Because now that she really looks upon the horizon. Arlong Park is not there. There's a large merchant boat in the docks of Kokoyashi, not one that the fishmen who have dominated her life for so long would allow upon their turf. What has happened here? She's only been gone a week and everything's where is Arlong Park? She dare not get her hopes up, dare not get off the boat or swing her head about. Maybe she's got heat stroke and she's looking in the wrong direction. Maybe she's asleep and this is all just a dream. Maybe. Nami, at the call of her elder sister, a voice she would recognize anywhere, Nami barely has a chance to open her arms before the blue-haired woman is throwing herself towards her. Nijiko is crying and laughing all at the same time. She's in a gorgeous summer dress, the one she's only ever worn to the one wedding on Kokoyashi, one Nami hadn't felt right in attending, so she'd watched from a distance. Her face is half hidden in the older woman's shoulder, her skin tingling, and Nami can't bring herself to look up. What her eyes are telling her, it can't be real. We've been freed, Nijiko whispers with a quiet reverence, and it hits Nami harder than any storm ever has. Dizziness overtakes her, a breathless kind of sensation that has the thief swaying in her sister's strong arms. What? The revolutionaries. They came and fought. One of them tore down Arlong Park all on his own. It was I never dreamed. Nijiko gives up trying to put it into words, just laughing, sounding so happy and so free, freer than Nami can ever remember her being. She sounds beautiful. As they make their way into town, Nami, still in some bastardized combination of shell-shocked and hopefulness, gets the full story from her sister. 5 days ago, a small boat docked, carrying 1 man and 2 women. The trio, revolutionaries, they'd proclaimed. Nami's heard about the Revolutionary Army, but only in whispers. Led by the world's most wanted man, they say, had then gone on to challenge Arlong and his whole crew. Because freeing people from oppression is just what they do, it's one of the revolution's main goals. They had fought, and they had won. The merchant ship currently docked upon the island is a revolutionary vessel in disguise, holding all the defeated Arlong pirates. All but Hachi, who had escaped. Though the black-haired woman had promised he wouldn't turn up again, stating he would be heading for more dangerous waters. The beings that had so terrorized Nami's village were now prisoners of the Revolutionary Army, whom would be using whatever intelligence they could gather to strike back against the tyranny of the world government, to free other islands and countries who suffer, who are under subjugation. It feels like she's in a dream. Nami cannot stop her arms from shaking, nor the tears that stream down from the corner of her eyes. All that work, all those years, and then these heroes come along and save them. She can see them now, sat in the town square and looking quite bashful as everyone just flocks around them. Two women, neither of them much older than Nami, flanking a blonde-haired male. They're all rather good-looking, even if the goggles the black-haired one insists upon wearing are quite odd. She doesn't dare approach them. How is she supposed to? What words could possibly express the deep gratitude she feels towards these three? How could she possibly explain it, put it into a comprehensive sentence? It feels like her whole heart's about to pound right out of her chest as the black-haired woman catches sight of her, tapping her blonde companion on the shoulder as she rises. The crowds part as she makes her way over, the revolutionary stopping just before Nami. What the thief doesn't expect is for the brown eyes to slide shut, for her to take a steadying breath. As if she's the one who needs to fortify herself for this conversation. When they open again and the woman smiles, Nami's heart leaps in her chest. "Hi. Your sister told me how hard you were working to try and save this place, but I'm afraid we beat you to it. Sorry to steal all the credit." And that's it. That's as much as Nami can take. She bursts into tears, flinging herself into the stranger arms and just clinging to her slightly taller form, body shaking. One soothing hand rubs gently at her back and it makes Nami cry even more. It's just all too good to be true. This kind of miracle never happens to her. She's just not a good enough person for it. Nami is greedy though, greedy enough to grasp it with both hands. "How can I ever repay you?" It had taken her ages to calm down, to the point the rest of the villages had given the two of them some space. Now, she has this woman, Riskua. She'd introduced herself as Riskua, or sat side by side, right in the center of Kokoyashi in a way she'd never have dared to do a week ago. "You don't need to," the dark-haired woman says, but there's a tentativeness to her words, like she wants to ask something of her but doesn't dare. Nami's been forced to work under the bastard who killed her mother, someone who'd taken from her, who'd branded her as property, someone who'd used and abused her, had never taken her consent for consideration. That this woman even hesitates to ask something of her, it's good enough for Nami. 2 years from now, round about May 5th, my little brother will be setting out to sea. The woman, Riskua, smiles. It shines with soft love, the sheer warmth assuring Nami this woman is about as far from Arlong as one can to be a revolutionary until he begins his journey, because I promised him long ago that I'd be his first mate while he chases after his dream. He wants to become the Pirate King, and I really think he can do it. This woman is going to be a pirate? Panic flashes across Nami's face before she can stop it, her stomach sinking and eyes squeezing shut. She forcibly steels herself though. Riskua and her fellows, Koala and Sabo, have liberated Konami Islands. They cannot possibly be bad people. Can they? Nami knows good Marines can exist, she was raised by one after all. Which means, just maybe, good pirates can exist too. We'll need a navigator, Riskua continues, graciously ignoring Nami's knee-jerk reaction to her admittance. I won't demand you join up to repay us or something, but if you could give Luffy a fair chance to win you over, I'd be really grateful. Done. She'd agreed without question. After all, it was the least she could do, give the little brother of one of her heroes a chance. Riskua had even made it explicitly clear she could back out if that's what she wanted. Nami's aware she's talented as a navigator, perhaps the very best in East Blue, and if not, she's well on her way to becoming so. It's no wonder the older girl had wanted to recruit her. Only, she's got a choice this time. Arlong had bullied her into it, held her village hostage. Riskua had liberated it. If her little brother has even a spark of that girl in him, then maybe it wouldn't be so bad to join up. She'd get to complete her map of the world. Surely Belmere would want her chasing her dream now that the village is free. Nami had even gone so far as to write Riskua's words down. He'll pop up in Shell Town not long after he sets off. Red vest, scar under his left eye and a straw hat. Goes by Monkey D. Luffy. The thief had squinted at the last name, reasonably certain there was some kind of big-shot marine with that family name, but she'd ultimately dismissed it as unimportant. "You look like you've got your thinking face on, Nami. What are you mulling over?" Nijiko slides upon the bench beside her. The warm smile that has remained on her face since the revolutionaries came is gone, and Nami desperately wants to ask after it. "Not lusting after those revolutionaries, are you?" "What? No." Feeling her cheeks burn, Nami pushes her sister's side, unable to suppress a reluctant smile when Nijiko laughs, all bright and lighthearted. Okay, so maybe she's mulling over her sudden triple impact of the sudden crushes she'd developed. If they weren't all so pretty, then she'd probably have only ended up with some serious hero worship at worst. But no, they were all gorgeous and now she's in trouble. Trying not to let her crush on Riskua influence her decision to join her little brother's crew is gonna prove hard if he turns out to be an okay captain. She almost wants him to be a good one, good enough to give her the excuse to join, almost. "Never mind that. What's got you frowning?" Nami asks, hastily trying to change the subject matter. At that, Nijiko's face crumples with annoyance once again, harsh scoff leaving from between her lips. "Some idiot swordsman asked if we'd seen some other hawk-eyed swordsman, then got all huffy when we tried to tell him he's heading the wrong way if he wants to be going south. I pity the poor sod that ends up trying to navigate a boat with him on it. He seems to be settling in well." Leaning against the railings of the crow's nest, Marco the Phoenix stares down at the latest addition to the crew, the latest addition to the family, with half-lidded eyes. Fire Fist Ace had fought hard as hell against Jinbei, enough that they'd felt the blows as they'd approached the site of the battleground. And that has been 5 days into their fight. The kid's tough, that much is a given. Resting his chin upon the callous meat of his palm, Marco peers down at the boy, elbow planted upon the railings of his current location. Ace is talking with Thatch right now, eyes bright and face open. But Marco had seen the vulnerability that those features could showcase, has seen the way those shoulders had hunched inwards to protect himself. For all his loud, brash personality, Portgas Ace has been hurt before, enough that he's locked away whatever was the cause, doesn't breathe a word of it. Marco's been a pirate long enough to recognize the secrecy that's etched into Ace's movements, to recognize the way he studiously avoids any mention of his parents. Nothing's wrong with that though, there's more than one whitebeard pirate who'd been all too happy to proclaim Pop's the only parent they've ever had, the only one they'd ever need. His gut is telling him it's something more than that though, some kind of keep-rooted silence that he's been stooped in so long he's forgotten what it's like to not be in that pit. Marco won't push though, especially given that it's Ace. He's seen the result of all their pushing, the kid only digs his heels in that much more, fights that much harder. No, it'll be a lot better to just let him open up on his own. There's so much Marco wants to know about his newest brother though. While he carries an ornamental dagger, he doesn't use it. The beaded necklace too, that's a strange accessory, almost as strange as the aggressively loud hat that sits constantly atop his head. And that tattoo. 4 letters, one of them crossed out and they have to stand for something. An acronym, undoubtedly. ASLR is not a word, and neither is OSR if you remove the crossed out S. Thatch has asked already, but only gotten a chuckle in response to his question of if the tattoo artist couldn't spell. No question about it being an acronym, but for what? The A could quite possibly be for Ace, but then who would the other 3 be? No one on Ace's crew, that's for sure. While they're close for a crew that have only been going a year, it's not the kind of bond that would lead to a permanent inking, not like what ties them to Pops. Oh, does Marco have questions for his new brother, but it can wait. He'll get his answers eventually. The Revolutionary Army's holding cells are clean things, as deep underground as the constructors of their building dared make the place. This is also, according to Farron, because they've never been used before, not for their intended purpose anyway. In fact, it's to the point where the gray-eyed male had been forced to remove the stacks and stacks of cans, emergency provisions, he proclaimed, from a fair few of the cells in order to make room for all their prisoners. Now they've got an entire pirate crew's worth of fishmen in the basement, taking up room and eating their food to the point Farron has been forced to leave the base in order to source some more provisions. Adjusting the brim of her hat, Koala's shoes click against the floor of the corridor's concrete floor, the ruffles of her salmon-pink top waving about with every step. She has an on-and-off relationship with pink. On one hand, it's a reminder of the peeling burn from the mark upon her back. But on the other, The right shade always symbolizes hope to her, a reminder of Fisher Tiger. He'd saved her, saved not only her life but her sense of self, restored it to what it had once been. Without him, even if Koala had been alive today, she'd have been a broken shell of a human. Had been when Captain Tiger found her. Only, he'd found her freshly broken, shattered pottery upon the ground, and he had taken the time to reassemble her, bit by bit, piece by piece. It wasn't a perfect fix, the glue still shows, despite how smooth her faces are, the cracks are still present. They'll never leave, Koala will never forget. But it is because of Fisher Tiger that Koala can hold a flood of human emotions once again, that she can react to all that goes on around her, take it all in and form her own opinions, react as she wishes to. Just like a vase can take in water, hold it there as stems grow, producing a dazzling flower arrangement in the end. All because Tiger put her back together, all because Tiger made her whole once again. She would be doing him a disservice if she didn't at least try with Arlong. Some of the fishmen have already jumped ship, so to speak, when faced with Hack. Hack who brought her here, to this place where she can fight, where she can make a difference. It doesn't surprise her in the least that as Hack talks to the fishmen, they listen to his words, that they see the very real cause they're fighting for. Already a third of Arlong's crew have signed up, ready to fight for the revolution. Maybe it's a bit presumptuous of her, but Koala likes to think it's the kind of thing Tiger might have joined, or at least allied with. Which is why she stops by Arlong's cell, wrapping her arms around her midsection as she glances between the bars. He says nothing, just stares at her with furious eyes that burn so bright in the underground chamber. I know Captain Tiger thought humans and fishmen should stay separate, she begins, worrying her lip back and forth, looking for the words, looking for how to put it into a comprehensive sentence that this fishman can understand. He's enraged already by her topic of discussion. It's evident in the cords in his neck, the hands that clench and unclench, the muscles and veins that strain against his skin. But I know he hated slavery more than anything, because otherwise why would he have freed me, helped me? Koala bursts, slamming her hand against one of the metal bars. Her fist smarts, throbbing in tempo with her pounding heart, and suddenly Koala doesn't have enough words, enough time, enough breath, to get it all off her chest. And I don't know if he was right, if we should stay separate. All I know is that Hack looked after me, brought me to the army so I could make a difference. And I'm going to do just that. I'm continuing Fisher Tiger's work against Mariajoy and the Tenryubido, because nobody should ever be a slave. There shouldn't be any more Fisher Tigers because there shouldn't be any more need for a being to attack a city to free slaves. The Tenryubido are what's wrong with this world, and before fishmen and humans even have a chance of working out our differences, we need to deal with them. And I don't know why you'd go and do exactly what Captain Tiger hated. Because you killed him. Spittle splatters across Koala's face and she stumbles back from the cell door just in time. Arlong's fingertips just grazing the delicate flesh of her cheeks. His opened palms slam against the bars, face twisted in fury. He returned you and you filthy humans sold him out. Tongue heavy, Koala takes another shaky step back, her limbs shaking. Pain laces through her chest and it feels like her heart is about to explode as those words sink in. Feels like her stomach has turned to lead. It suddenly all makes sense. Why no one ever came looking for her, why no one ever took notice of the runaway slave. Did they trade her freedom for Tiger's head? Even as she thinks the question, she knows it's true, knows it like the face in the mirror, like the burn upon her back. She doesn't know what else to say, doesn't know how to handle this, but it appears as if Arlong is not done. Do you know what your filthy species did to him? That they stole him? Made him a slave? That he suffered for years before he escaped? That is what you humans do. Why should what I do be any different to how you disgusting humans treat us? The Fu's breath are the only sound within the corridor. Even his crew have gone quiet in the face of this startling news. Her chest is aching with these new revelations, with the news that Tiger, her hero, her savior, the being who made her whole again, made her Koala again, suffered just as she did. It doesn't matter if they're fishman or human, Koala whispers flatly, her chin trembling as the words tumble out, forcing her gaze up from the floor to meet Arlong. It doesn't matter if they're fishmen or if it's humans doing it. Anyone subjecting others, anyone who does that, is all that Fisher Tiger stood against. It's all that I stand against as a member of the Revolutionary Army. And just as I helped stop you, I'm going to help take down the Tenryubido. even if I die doing it. She doesn't want to look at this being any longer, this being who knew Tiger's past and still forced others to suffer like their hero had. Koala walks away. Why are we always sent somewhere cold? Riskua hisses beneath her breath, the lower half of her face pressing into the thick red scarf wrapped around her shoulders and neck. Her arm is looped through Sabo's side, pressing into his in the futile hope that some of his body heat will leak into hers. This close to the North Pole though, there's no chance of that happening. The place steals heat like Luffy does meat, ripping it away and giving no impression of her ever being able to conserve any for herself. As Dragon-san's second in command, I have to go to the more dangerous places, and you're too valuable to entrust to anyone else, Sabo proclaims quietly, a huge grin smeared across his face, and Riskua rolls her eyes fondly. He's not shut up about his damn promotion. In truth, she hadn't been fully aware just how much Sabo was working alongside Dragon until the excited blonde had come bouncing in proclaiming himself the official second in command. Really, Riskua thinks it's because, should anything ever happen to Dragon, the man knows that Sabo would inherit his will, would take up the red flag and power onwards. That he believes wholeheartedly in the cause and will not back down for anything, in the face of anything, even death. Isn't there a tropical county in need of some support though? Hell, at this point I'll settle for a subtropical island in need. I'm not going to be picky. Sabo huffs a laugh, slipping his arm free from where it had been pressed into her side to instead wrap it around her shoulders. Riskua accepts the gesture greedily, pushing herself further into Sabo's torso and the deliciously warm feel of that steady body against her ribs. I promise, next time I'll look for a job somewhere warm, even if it's just a supply run. Now tell me about this water propulsion thing you're working on. You heard about that, have you? Hack keeps complaining that you've invaded the swimming pool. Swimming pool is a rather loose term, one given to the underground lake that revolutionaries have adopted as a pool for fitness training. After all, it'd be suspicious as hell if the Marines saw them running laps around Baltigo, especially with the numbers steadily increasing as recruitment goes into overdrive. I'm working on something, and I think I've got the basics of it down now. Is it as impressive as your concealment hockey? Sabo tips his head to a side, slowly building smile on his lips. Well, it's nothing as good as being made second in command, Riskua muses, gently elbowing her friend in the side, but I think I've figured out walking on water. Well, more running on water, Riskua mentally admits as Sabo gapes at her. It had been a logical step. Even back in the before there'd been a deep-rooted belief that walking on water was possible. True, she'd always found religion sketchy, even before this life. But the idea had to have come from somewhere. If the people here could jump through the air for God's sakes, it only made sense that she'd try walking on water. It's like none of the idiots in this world have any common sense whatsoever. No one thinks. No new developments in hockey for years and years. She'd asked the older members of the revolution and they were all too happy to impart that information. And not once have they ever looking at the ocean and thought, hey, we can kick the air to almost fly. How about trying to walk on the stuff that covers the vast majority of our Earth? It's the height of stupidity. Admittedly, it had taken Riskua a week of near sleepless nights to get somewhat close to working out the right ratio of hockey to physical force. Even then she can only do it at high speed, and it's not exactly subtle either. She leaves a massive wake whenever she's moving. But the point is, she doesn't need to rely upon a ship anymore, not for short distance travel anyway. While she's still working out the mechanics of it, she has concluded that armament hockey is about emitting force. Hockey itself is about willpower affecting the physical world in different ways, either reading or influencing it. Why would it be so difficult to use that to move across the ocean, when combined with enough physical force from the legs to propel oneself forwards? Riskua has happily proclaimed it water skating in her notes, because that's the best description she's been able to come up with. It's also nice to be at the point where she's not falling into the water constantly when she gets one little thing wrong. You're walking on water? Sabo hisses, ducking his head down so that he can keep their conversation private. To anyone else, they probably appear as if they're on a date or something, which is an exceptionally weird thought. Is this what a date would feel like? Well, unlike you, I'm not jockeying for a promotion, so I've got time to get shit done. Sabo splutters, the arm not over her shoulders flapping about uselessly as he searches for the words to express his displeasure with that declaration. You're so mean, and if you weren't as subtle as cannon fire, I'd have rather had Luffy become a revolutionary. A shocked breath. You don't really mean that, Sabo, don't lie. Taking a hold of the blonde's cheek, Riskua pinches it between her forefinger and thumb, grinning when her hockey-coated fingers mean he can't just dissolve into the breeze and slip free. Yeah, sure, voice distorted by her grasp. Sabo bats at her fingers and Riskua willingly releases her prey. Now let's get to work already. The village in which they're in is being used as the personal playground of one of the Tenryubito, whose holiday home now occupies what had once been sanctified ground upon the hilltop. Something he'd forced the villagers to not only build, but ensure the upkeep of while he is away, all with no pay. It's either follow his demands or become a Tenryubito slave and be forced to follow the demands anyway. At least begrudgingly working they keep their freedom, as loose a meaning as the word can have in any sense. The man's an awful person, as is every Tenryubito Riskua knows about, and it really doesn't seem like that pattern's about to change. The villages look upon the house with obvious hatred in their eyes, spite upon their faces. Which is probably why they all cheer something terribly when a hurricane tears right through the place. Holy ground or not, to them, it's a miracle. She and Sabo are hiding upon a rooftop, beneath concealment hockey, even if Sabo's is weak enough that she can pay him significant attention. No one else is looking for him though, no one else is even looking for a perpetrator to the current events, so they won't be noticed. It's not enough, Sabo whispers, eyes on the ruins his powers have left behind. We need to clean out the handful of marines the Tenryubito left here too. Dark eyes scan the landscape, resting upon the tiny little outpost that resides by the coast. It is a small thing. There can't be more than 20 men in there freezing their asses off, but that's 20 marines too many for this tiny little island. Let's rock and roll then. Riskua is locked in hand-to-hand combat with one of the marines when shush over the edge of the small ship. It's not even a battleship, does it even have cannons? And down towards the ocean. She doesn't see anything wrong with that at first, about to shrug and continue her fight before it all comes crashing to the forefront of her mind. Sabo's a devil fruit user now. Shit. Giving up the pretense of keeping a low profile, Riskua decks her opponent with a hockey-coated fist, punting him out into the ocean as she rockets to the side of the deck. Just in time for Sabo to float up to the side of the railings, light as the very air that he now is. Of course. He's the air itself now, he'd have to be thrown at the ocean with too much force to have time to react before Riskua would really need to worry. He can just dissolve into the air and float himself back up. Ah, were you worried about me? Yes, the disguised redhead barks out, spinning on heel and propelling the nearest marine out into the ocean. Yes, I was. If you'd eaten any other fruit that'd have been, she doesn't have the words to describe it. Her heart had just clenched, crumpling in as if it were a second from exploding. Riskua is not fond of the sensation at all. Dangerous, Sabo finishes, running a hand through his hair, face scrunching up at the reminder he'd left his hat back at the boat. Reinforcements. Riskua's head snaps up. Of course, of all the times for there to be a supplely run to this base, it has to be now, when they're trying to kick the Marines out. We'll have to call it quits, that's Vice Admiral Doberman. Sabo has a tiny little telescope out now, the kind that navigators keep in their pockets. All the Marines are down, groaning on the deck, and Riskua shifts from foot to foot, itching to do something. Leaving a job unfinished, leaving a job unfulfilled, it doesn't feel right. It has Riskua itching, trying to push the thought of failure from her mind as her teeth gnaw at the flesh inside her cheek. You there, identify yourselves. The thunderous boom launches from the approaching marine ship right towards them, and Riskua grimaces. Loud, very loud. We need to go, if the Marines figure out we're active out here. What Sabo is not saying is rather clear too. If the Tenryubito find out they're targeting places they've taken over, that they own, they'll want more Marine presence around those locations. Which will make their job a hell of a lot harder. Still, Riskua thinks as she weighs up the presences on the other Marine ship, they could probably take them. Now is not the time to be taking a page out of Ace's book. He's right, as always. How are we even going to get out? She snaps, running to the edge of the Marine ship and throwing herself down to the dock. Falling into a neat tuck and roll, Riskua comes up sprinting, Sabo right beside her. They'll search the island for us, probably find our boat. This could be tricky, admits Sabo. lips pressing into a hard smile, and Riskua feels the muscles of her cheek twitch. Her neck hot beneath the heavy weight of her black wig. Only Riskua has a plan. I'll go sink the ship. What she has in mind is probably a little more reckless than what Sabo's probably assuming. In fact, he'll no doubt tear her a new one once it's all over and done with. But it's better for Sabo to get out on the boat and for her to meet up with him later than risk the two of them sticking around and ending up with no way out. Sabo's got his devil fruit powers. He can force the wind into the sail and get it to carry him away. Besides, his concealment isn't good enough for a long-term game of hide and seek yet. What are you planning? Don't worry about it. You get the boat and I'll meet you on notice. Okay? She doesn't give him much time to complain, to object. Riskua splits off from her best friend, circling back around the little village they'd just been running through. Each exhale visibly trails out behind her, white smoke in the cold air, dragon's breath leaking out from between her lips as she pushes herself harder. Approaching the edge of the island, the niece of Dracul Mahawk, the daughter of Red Hair Shanks, pulls hard at her hockey and leaps towards the water. The first step she sinks slightly, the water different than what she's used to practicing on. There's more salt in the sea than in that little swimming pool. There's more motion with the waves here, but Riskua adapts. It's almost like ice skating really. Only ice is a solid, water is a liquid. A mix between Geppo and ice skating. Because it's not as difficult as kicking through the air, but it's not as easy as frictionless ice. It's somewhere between, but really, Riskua is perfectly capable of powering through that. By the third forward slide of her leg, she's picking up speed, and by the 15th, there's a wake behind her as she powers forwards. In the before she'd never gotten a chance to ride a speedboat, but she imagines it'd have been something like this. Only, far less tiring. She doesn't need to pump her arms back and forth, but it's habit. Habit gained from running as fast as she can, though if needs be she can deflect cannon fire. And there is cannon fire. Riskua skids to a side, kicking up a wave of water half as tall as she to avoid the first blast, her feet sinking slightly before she pulls herself back together. She got a ship to sink after all, and that's not going to happen if she has to keep dodging cannon fire. No. Sink it. Scowling, Riskua shoots forwards again, pushing herself up and out of the water with a quick switch to Geppo. The Marines swear, and then Doberman is there, meeting her in the sky with a fist of his own. It's not hockey enchanted though, not like hers anyway, and he goes crashing back down onto the deck. Riskua hops up and over him, kicking the next Marine to come at her in the face. She clears the deck of the boat, dropping back to the ocean and almost falling right in before she gets her balance again. Waist deep, Riskua pushes her legs, and it's so much harder to rise up, to come up into water skating from a depth. She needs to work on her landings, on coming out of and getting back into the water, that much is clear. There's an incredibly amount of shouting from the Marines now, and Riskua is done, so done with this. Dashing forwards, the disguised redhead swears as a bullet clips her side, tearing through her ribs. They don't manage to stop her from getting to the hull of the ship, don't manage to stop her from physically tearing a human-shaped hole in the side a la Garp style. Just coating herself in as much armament as she can and taking a running leap at the metal. The impact hurts, lets her know she's not managed to protect herself as much as she could, but the ship is taking on water now. It floods in, a constant bombardment of force, and she struggles pushing through to the open ocean. Gasping, Riskua pulls in a sharp breath of air, feeling her sides scream in protest. Pressing her hands, the wound, it comes away bloody, bloodier than it probably should. But she can't stop moving, that'll be worse than death. It'd mean being captured. Instead, the redhead takes off again with water skating, because while she's much more familiar with Geppo, powering through the air takes far more effort, if less concentration. At least this way she'll be forced to focus on something else, to keep powering forwards instead of paying attention to the pain in her ribs. Loosening the fabric belt from her waist, Riskua hoists it up her ribs, tightening the material to put better pressure upon her bullet wound as she goes. With this she at least has less chance of bleeding out. But really, considering all the injuries she remembers from the world of One Piece, Riskua highly doubts she's going to die from this. Son of a bitch, she hisses, stumbling as another bullet slams into her thigh, lodging itself in there. Damn snipers. It hurts so much. No, she's not going to die from this, no way in hell. Pushing onwards, Riskua forces herself not to focus on the pain, to keep going, to get away as the marine ship sinks. Meet up with Sabo when she recovers, she just has to find land first. Despite Doflamingo's move to the Grand Line, Sengoku has always gone out of his way to at least keep an eye on the happenings in North Blue. It might not have been his home sea, but it had been where he found Rosinante, his son who had died giving a child a chance to live. A child that has repaid him by becoming a pirate. Oh, he's been careful to really avoid marine attention. But Sengoku isn't stupid, he can see the signs. It won't be long now until that boy ends up with a bounty on his head. Is this what Garp feels like, when he heard about that grandkid of his running around with Whitebeard of all people? Not that Sengoku has any kind of attachment to Trafalgar Law. But Rosinante did. Threw away his career and lost his life while on his mission to save that brat. And he'd clearly saved him. It's no comfort though, knowing that Rosinante achieved his goal pales in comparison to the fact he died doing so. He has to have died doing so, and the fleet admiral of the Marines is more than certain it was Doflamingo who did the deed. He can feel it in his bones and it grates, having to ignore the atrocities of the man, to actually endorse them, it hurts. It is because he keeps an eye on North Blue though, that he finds out about the little incident that Vice Admiral Doberman reports in. Of someone sinking a ship with a method far too close to how Garp powers through walls for comfort. That's not what's worrying though. The description of an unidentified person moving across the water, ending up knee-deep and being capable of propelling themselves. Some kind of devil fruit? But they were reported to have ended up half immersed in water and they didn't sink. Some form of Vinsmoke technology then? It'll be risky trying to get a spy in that particular operation, but they'll have to at least try in the face of this. Things would be so much easier as Rosinante were here now. He'd probably be a vice admiral by now, and maybe he'd have even managed to drag the Trafalgar brat into the Marines. The Ope fruit would be incredibly useful. But Sengoku will respect his son's unsaid dying wish. He won't bring the brat to Marine attention until he earns himself his first bounty. Still, probably best to have someone go investigate this. And to go retrieve the Marines who've had their ship sunk. Just because you're a logia does not make you impervious to damage, Portgas. Grinning sheepishly, Ace runs a hand through his hair, the other one still stretched out before him as the nurse digs around in the muscle of his arm, ensuring everything is all cleaned out. It doesn't matter that he's a logia and can just burn up anything foreign in his body. The nurses still insist on checking him over anyway. It's nice to have someone who knows what they're doing worrying over him. Riskua and Sabo tried. But now that he's actually spent some time with doctors and nurses, Ace is painfully aware of just how lacking they'd been as kids when it comes to the medical side of things. God, they were lucky none of them died really, thinking back on it. Who's Sabo? He's a worrywart, Ace admits, waving away the nurse's concern, stomach rumbling and he's more than ready to get some food in him. The nurse had said she couldn't check him over unless he went an hour without eating, and Thatch wouldn't give him any kind of food until he'd been checked over, so there'd been no winning for him. But he's so hungry now, hungry to the point he'd fight Luffy for just a leg of tiger. Tiger? Pausing. Ace considers the nurse before him, wondering if she can read minds. It wouldn't be a surprise, especially given some of the devil fruit powers he's seen on his journey so far. Mind reading wouldn't be strange. In fact, that'd be pretty normal. A devil fruit turning someone into a fruit would be weird. Ace squints suspiciously at Marco, who's leaning back against the wall, one leg kicked up against it and shoulders resting on the wood. Marco looks like somebody who'd eat a devil fruit with fruit powers. It'd certainly explain the haircut. Go get some food in him, he'll come down eventually. Down? Ace stares at his feet, chuckling. Maybe the nurse is just a bit out there, because his feet are most certainly on the floor. Come on, Marco, I'm hungry. You're always hungry, Ace, yoy. Nevertheless, Marco steps out the door, walks slow enough that Ace can eagerly catch up as they begin making their way to the dining hall. God, he's starving. He could eat a gator or 6. They certainly gave you the good drugs, didn't they? Sure did. Ace nods in agreement. He hadn't felt a damn thing when they were poking around in his arm. He wonders if any of the others have been injured to the point of needing the good drugs yet. Fore's all hooked up. Aye. These are definitely Marine standard issue bullets, Captain. Thank you, Akaku. Accepting the small plastic bag Akaku hands him, Trafalgar D. Waterlaw stares at the contents, giving them a little shake to hear the clink as the metal clicks together. It has been near an hour and a half since they fished the unconscious woman out of the sea, and after ensuring she hadn't taken in any water, the odds of her falling unconscious just as she'd gotten close enough for him to help are astronomical. He'd set to work. The bullet wound in her side is now nearly stitched shut, all cleaned out and the bullet within removed. He'd done the same for the wound in her thigh, though that was far more interesting. In fact, a fair amount about this woman is interesting. The goggles she had been wearing lie on the bedside table now. The temporary impressions they've created in her skin suggest she's been wearing them for a while. There's even tan lines, slight though they are, where the straps of the goggles should rest. Normally this might indicate supportive eyewear, and usually Law would assume just that, were it not for the wig. There's a mane of red beneath that black wig. It had felt unnatural when he'd been checking her head for any possible bumps or bruises, any injures. He'd had to take it off, to remove both parts of the disguise regardless of any possible invasion of privacy. Not that he cares, Law's a pirate after all, he's not some kind of saint. Though he had taken the time to insist only Akaku stay. None of the other men have seen her because Law does not yet know what he's dealing with. Certainly no Marine, otherwise she wouldn't have been struck with Marine bullets. His eyes linger back on the projectiles in question as he's reminded of yet another puzzle. This woman escaped the Marines when, given where the bullet had been resting in her leg, she should have been crippled by the pain. It had been pressed right up against a very particular nerve bundle. It should have been sending unimaginable pain up to her brain. She shouldn't have been capable of continuing to flee. Only she has managed to outrun the Marines, that much is clear by her very real presence here. Checking the woman's vitals once again, Law picks up one of her slim wrists, inspecting the hand as he takes her pulse. Callous skin. Lithe fingers littered with tiny little scars from years of knife work. Given the sets of daggers he'd found the woman carrying, that's no surprise. She's not sporting a pirate's mark, no cloth or inking to suggest she has affiliations to anyone. Well, there is the one tattoo on her left shoulder blade, a small delicate inking of 4 simple letters. The design nags at Law. ASLR. He's sure he's seen it somewhere before but it's just not clicking. He'd been forced to remove her pants to tend to her leg wound, along with her top to treat her rib wound. It's not his first time seeing a naked woman. He's a doctor and a pirate. It's nowhere near his first time, but it's rare to see one with such subtle curves. The tiny tattoo matches her slender figure though, the 4 letters reading horizontally across her tanned skin. It's irritating that he can't remember where he's seen that design from. He's already flicked through the local wanted posters, but none of them have matched the woman he's found, not her disguised self nor her real features. Any idea who she is, Captain? Akaku asks, naked curiosity in her eye as she leans closer, almost fully over their patient. Law has but a second to register what's happening before the redhead has snapped awake, one arm around Akaku's neck and the other shooting for the brace upon her belt, the one he'd had to strip her of. There's a second's pause as she realizes that her weapons are missing, that she's in a hospital gown, and in that second Law snaps up a room. Release her. There's no messing about. No one touches Law's crew if he has any say in it. Given he's got a room going, if this strange makes one wrong move, he'll be dumping her back where he found her, in the ocean. And then he'll make Akaku clean up the seawater he swaps her with for being stupid enough to get caught. The woman's eyes catches his and Law can't quite suppress the flinch at the sight of them. Fucking creepy, and also, just his luck, very recognizable. While, first and foremost, he might be a doctor and a captain, Law is also a swordsman. He knows exactly which pirates to avoid tangling with when it comes to sword fighting, and a man with eyes like that is at the top of the list. Well fuck, no wonder she wears the tinged goggles, but hell if Law understands the necessity of the black wig. Wouldn't that make her more recognizable than her natural red? Where am I? Not, who are you, or, why did you help me? Where am I? She not only recognized him, but she's not worried about his presence here either. Confident in her skills then. The forearm she has pressed to Akaku's neck, keeping her between the two of them, doesn't so much as tremble. On my ship, Law answers, and though he's sure this woman doesn't wield a devil fruit, sure that he's confiscated all her weapons, she still gives off that dangerous feeling of someone completely in control of the situation. Perhaps she's bluffing, But that's a dangerous road to travel down when she's got one of his crew in her grasp. Where? North Blue, just off of Barmork. How far away is Notice? Notice, Law knows that town. It's a rather wealthy place, and while that would usually make it a prime target for pirates, the large marine base residing a 30-minute walk away actively discourages the bravest of crews. Release a Kaku and we can discuss this like civilized human beings, Red Yaw. She flinches slightly at the name, free hand going up to grip at the vibrant strands as her face contorts with a grimace, showcasing her very obvious displeasure over the removal of her wig. Intense yellow assesses him for a moment and Law culls the urge to straighten beneath that heavy gaze. Regardless though, Red releases a Kaku, who's quick to scuttle right back over to his side. If Red managed to get the drop on her so easily, then she needs to step up her training. It doesn't matter that Law himself hadn't had time to react either. It's clear they all need to work harder if they're going to be ready to enter the Grand Line within the next year or so. This is a woman who wanders around North Blue, and she already seems significantly stronger than what he's used to. Too confident in herself for Law to believe he has full control of the situation, even with a room up. He's not about to make assumptions, to take everything at face value. Because I'm still his brother by blood, sure, he'll get mad, but he won't kill me. Because that only leads to pain. Well, there are a lot of tightly constrained impatience in that tone and Law tightens his grip upon Kokoku. It would require 6 days to travel to Notice from Barmork, Red Yaw. Shit, she hisses beneath her breath, running a stressed hand through her hair. She noticeably flinches at the pull such a movement makes on her side, wincing with one arm curling around her ribs to lightly finger to exposed wound. It may be cleaned and treated, but the entry site is still present. Law watches the tanned fingers trace over his needlework, uncovered by the neat little square Akaku had cut into the hospital gown, so that there was no messing around with lifting it up and off while he needed to work at the site of the injury. Why'd you help me? Yellow eyes snap back up to look at him, though Red doesn't remove her hand from where it's still resting over her flank. She's favoring her good leg and the doctor-in-law itches to get her back onto the bed so she can heal and get out of his life. The pirate in him demands answers. I was curious. Those were marine bullets we dug out of your body. Well, any other surgeon would have dug. Law himself only needs a quick snap of his fingers. Red doesn't need to know that though. If that's your subtle way of asking if I'm a marine, the answer is no, just finished destroying some Tenryubito property, actually. That Law has heard about. He also recalls something about a hurricane and his wariness towards this woman rises another notch. So she wasn't working alone then, she's been separated from someone who has devil fruit powers. After all, what else would be capable of sum up a hurricane? You're in luck, Red Yaw. We will be stopping by Barmork, then heading to Notice. Because like hell Law's going to let marine presence dictate where he docks his ship. If Beppo wants to get a look around that town, then they're gonna get to look around that town. Law'd decapitate any marine who tries to stop them and leave their headless bodies running around like oversized chickens. Is that a subtle offer for a lift? It means I have questions, Red Yaw, and you can answer them in exchange for a lift. Her jaw tightens, a muscle twitching beneath bronzed skin, and Law feels himself tensing in response. Quiet as a mouse, Akaku watches their interaction with wide brown eyes, her hands having retreated beneath the long sleeves of her boiler suit in a visible presentation of just how nervous she is. How do I know you won't just drop me in the ocean the second I'm done giving you answers? How do I know any answer you give me is the truth? She smirks, fucking smirks. Not a bumbling fool of a pirate then. Not someone who uses blunt force to batter the opposition into submission. Someone who recognizes that the world isn't black and white and that trust is almost non-existent, that it can only come into being by careful cultivation. Zaw, we'll just have to learn to trust each other, is that it? A temporary alliance, Law corrects. The woman's sure of herself, that much is clear. So while Law has no problem approaching Notice on his own with just his crew, another ally, just in case, would be a good idea. To get around the Marines at Notice. He's heard there's a vice admiral in the area, so it will probably be best to play it cautious. I suppose I can work with that, Red murmurs, sucking in her lower lip, white teeth grazing across the dry flesh. Law's gaze follows the motion without any real thought. Perhaps he should go looking for some entertainment when they arrive at Barmork. Clearly it's been a bit too long if he considers this, even for a moment. Akaku, go and inform Cleone that he is to set up the guests' quarters. Aye, Captain. The only female member of his crew is quick to leave the room, not that Law can really blame her. When he turns his attention back around, he's aware Red has moved. She's within his room after all. He's aware of everything. Law's not expecting to be met with long stretches of tanned flesh covered only by sensible black undergarments. Red has opted to strip out of her hospital gown, pulling on the trousers he divested her of near 2 hours ago, fingering the hole that the bullet had left behind in the material. Your shirt is not exactly in wearable condition, Red yaw. Glancing down at her front, Red gives a shallow shrug of her shoulders, rolling them back as she tests her range of movement. I'm fine as I am. Wonderful, she's not exactly body shy, is she? It's not exactly something Law is used to, given that this is North Blue, a sea not exactly known for its tropical islands. Exposed skin means cold skin. Well, his men are well behaved enough to keep their hands to themselves, and their guest doesn't exactly seem like the type to overreact with regards to violence. Still, he won't have Penguin revert the brig back to the storage unit that it had been serving as just yet. There's always a chance they might need it, after all. With one more glance at Red, Law allows his room to flutter away, ignoring the slight lethargy that it induces within him. Captain Trafalgar Law of the Heart Pirates. You can call me Riss, Captain Law. How quaint. Riss takes in every little thing she can as they walk down the corridor. Smart of her not to give him a full name. She's obviously recognizes him on sight. He'd seen it in her eyes, but irritating for him. She's sharper than most pirates Law has met, but that's a given. He's spent time with pirates that are at Grand Line level. There are few pirates cut from that same cloth here in North Blue. Perhaps his expectations are a bit too high. Perhaps he's on a higher level than those just starting out. Law's been a pirate since he was 13 and full of boiling anger, full fury he'd tried to bury beneath an emotionless facade. He hadn't wanted to express anything, because any expression, any attachment, it meant getting hurt. Khorasan taught him to live again, taught him to feel. Even if he had been ripped away, Law's faith in humanity had been restored in those heartbreaking moments between, I love you, and that gunshot. He's cracked, but he's not broken, will never allow himself to be broken again. Not after all the painstaking effort Khorasan went through to piece him back together. Zaw, I'm not brilliant with conversation openers, but the awkward hush is a bit much. Riss' wig is back on her head, every last strand of red hidden beneath the black tresses, goggles once again covering her eyes. He wonders what the relation between her and the famed Shichibukai. It does bring up the question of why she's in North Blue, but Law puts it to a side. They're still trying to find stabling footing to stand upon with one another, though part of Law is itching for a spar, to let off some steam. It has been a while since something really challenged him. We can start with my questions if you'd like to fill the lips twitch up to fight off a grimace. Head cocking to a side as she hunches her shoulders in a low shrug. Her walk is stiff, skin blotchy and eyes a little too shiny to be described as anything other than watery. She might not have been feeling the pain of that bullet pressing up against her raw nerve, but she's certainly riding the after effects now. At least she's a coherent sufferer when it comes to pain. Ask away. Hands stuffed into pockets. Riss still watching him from the corner of her tinted goggles. He has a multitude of topic to pick from, her potential ability to ignore pain, the reason he'd found her sporting 2 marine bullet wounds, just why she's so confident when faced with him despite a lack of devil fruit powers and her missing weapons. But the arrival of Penguin halts any words before his tongue can form them. Ah, Captain, he pauses, glancing at Riss before his attention flies back to Law. The curiosity is there though. Caribou has dinner ready. Will we be having a guest? Hungry, Riss yaw? Well, if you're going to offer to feed me, I'm hardly about to turn you down. Dinner is ultimately uneventful, despite the additional presents, no matter how pleased Akaku is for the presence of just one more woman upon the sub. All she does is observe. Riss that is. Observe and eat, slowly and methodically, as if she's not paying true attention to her meal. Which is almost an insult. Caribou is hardly an amateur cook after all. Still, Law is paying her as much attention as he possibly can. The way she flicks her knife around her fingers, a steak knife, proves she knows how to use those daggers of hers, And the way she half hunches over her food is interesting, almost as if she's expecting someone to steal it away should they be given the opportunity. Who knows what kind of life drives a person to destroy the property of Tenryubito? Though Law can take a guess and say it wasn't part of the ideal, marine-approved childhood. She doesn't really interact with any of the crew, though is polite enough to give her thanks to Caribou for the food, dipping her head in gratitude. Now she's following him around, her eyes constantly snapping to the windows and the dark stretch of ocean outside. He wonders if she's ever been aboard a submarine before, if she feels something akin to the claustrophobia Beppo had described upon their first few ventures together aboard the Polar Tang. "Why are you a pirate, Captain Law?" Suppressing a little smirk at the title, Law adjusts his hold of Kokoku, angling his head towards Riss. She's significantly shorter than him, nearly a whole foot if his guesstimation is correct. The difference in height has no effect upon her attitude towards dealing with him, however. Perhaps she's used to people taller than her. Hell, in their world, Law's not exactly the pinnacle of human height. "I'm going to find the One Piece and become the Pirate King." The ultimate fuck you to the Marines who destroyed Flevens, to Doflamingo and his infernal strings. Law will become the freest man in the world, so that not even his past can keep a hold of him. "What about you, Riss Ya?" "Za, I'm not a pirate, not yet anyway," she muses, the fingers of her hands flexing beneath the brown gloves she's pulled on, retrieved from the pockets of her pants. Law had found no hidden blades or poison upon them, so had seen no need to remove them from her possession. "Not yet, I promised my little brother I'd serve as his first mate when he set off," she admits, wistful smile on her face even as Law's ribcage clenches at the mention of a little sibling. Yellow eyes tinted brown from colored lenses meet his, a challenge within as she continues. His dream is to be the Pirate King. A direct rival then. Riss seems like a formidable woman, she gives off the kind of presence that'd make many of the pirates Law has crossed, and subsequently flattened, in North Blue think twice about attacking her. Maybe she gets that from her father, uncle, brother, he's unsure. Regardless, if the younger sibling is anything like the elder, then this could prove quite interesting. It does mean, however, that their alliance won't last. In the very least, their relationship here is clearly temporary. Which could potentially be a shame. Riss is the first interesting thing he's come across in the last month or so. Were it not for the fact she proclaims herself promised to the crew of her little brother, he might even try to entice her away. Being clever enough, and maybe strong enough, to escape North Blue Marines is a promising trait for a pirate, after all. In your dream, Riss Ya? He's not an idiot, he notices how she blatantly doesn't mention her own desires. With a bemused smile, Riss stops in the middle of the corridor, bowing her head, and he only just manages to catch the slight flutter of cilia against her cheeks as she closes her eyes. What is she? 8 people still in the gallery, 3 working a level below us, 5 on the levels above us, and 1 at what I assume is the helm, though they don't feel human. How the fuck does she know that? Undoubtedly feeling the burning weight of his glare, Riss opens her creepy ass eyes and smiles at him, a defiant little dare tucked into the corner of her mouth. As if challenging him to ask. She's no devil fruit user, she'd be dead if she were. She'd been floating in the sea after all. I'll admit, I'm curious. Being able to sense where people are around him would be beyond helpful in his quest to end Doflamingo. Law's paranoid enough that he risked life and limb on ensuring the ship of his pirating career is a submarine. A vessel capable of carrying him beneath the safety of the ocean's bulk, placing a protective watery layer between him and Doflamingo's intimidatingly impressive reach. Those infernal strings cannot reach him down here. He clings to the freedom Khorasan thrust upon him, the freedom that came as an undercover marine stuffed a devil fruit down his throat. It's called hockey, an ability anyone can potentially use but few ever access. It's remarkably common upon the second half of the Grand Line and almost non-existent outside of that particular sea. The second half of the Grand Line where Doflamingo no doubt resides. No doubt that bastard not only knows of this ability, but he's probably proficient in it too. Well shit. His eventual meeting with the Shichibukai is a long way off though. Perhaps there is another reason for him to attempt working out a genuine alliance with Riss Captain then, if what she claims is true. My dream is to become the world expert on hockey. Perhaps the dream would mean more to Law if he had an understanding of just what hockey is. For now, all he can do is mark it down upon his list to conduct further research into. It'll probably become a priority to learn about, and probably learn how to perform, if what she proclaims is true. The implications of Doflamingo having another power in addition to his formidable devil fruit is bitterly distressing. Care to explain? Why should I? You're catching a lift on my ship, Risya. There has to be a significant amount of tension between them, because Cleone rounds the corner, takes one look, and then aborts his approach to retreat back the way he came. I don't need a lift, Captain Law. I could tear through the side of this ship and make my way to the closest island under my own power if need be. Strangely enough, the captain of the Heart Pirates does not doubt her words, despite the improbability of a human being capable of such things. There's more powers out there than devil fruits though, as he's literally just found out, and he is woefully uneducated. Who knows what this Haki can do? If you feel capable of doing such a thing, then I implore you to give it your best shot, Risya. Because if you don't manage an escape upon your first attempt, you won't be able to perform a second. It's a threat, clear as day, but Law has absolutely no problem delivering it. Should she put his crew in danger like that? Should she put Law in danger like that? Rest of her stay upon the polar tang in pieces. That's if Law keeps her aboard, alive, at all. Za, I suppose it's a good thing you offered me that lift then. Indeed. Law leaves Riss at the entrance to her guest quarters, making his way back to the operating theater that she had first awoken in. Beneath the metal floorboard, stored there with the use of his Oppo powers, are Riss effects. Though if her boast of being able to tear through the side of the polar tang holds any weight, he should perhaps store them somewhere a bit smarter, a bit more difficult to get to, somewhere unexpected. There are no clues upon her weapons as to this Haki, though he hadn't really expected to find any. His next port of call is Ermin. Out of everyone on the crew, he's the one that hoards all the out there knowledge, so if someone has an inkling on this Haki business, then it's probably him. That's how Law finds himself in the little office all the crew have unrestricted access to, but really only Ermin and Beppo make use of. As such, it is divided evenly down the middle, half containing neatly stacked tomes on navigation, the other taking upon the appearance of a library which managed to survive a localized hurricane by the skin of its teeth. Ermin is within, flicking through one book with the ease of a seasoned scholar. How the artificial light of the submarine manages to reach the pages, given that Ermin is hunched over the book to the point his black flick of a pompadour should block out the light, Law has no idea. Captain, he snaps out after a few moments of totally ignoring Law's presence. It's noting personal. The captain of the Heart Pirates is well aware of just how easy it is to be lost within a good book when one actually enjoys reading. Ermin, I need any information you've come across regarding Haki. Haki, Captain? Law likes to think he has a strong bond with all of his crew. The one thing he took away from Doflamingo is a strong bond with the crew makes a strong captain stronger. And he appreciates having a fellow academia on board, even if Ermin's interests run more towards the occult rather than medicine. It's because of this exemplary bond that Law can stand and wait for his onboard fun facts finder to kickstart his brain. I'll have a flick through, see what I can dig up, but it's not ringing many bells, I'm afraid, Captain. Try for feats of superhuman strength, and an ability to sense the general location and state of others as well, despite a lack of devil fruit powers. Ermin tilts his head to a side, pencil dangling from between his teeth as busy hands reach for a notepad. Will do, Captain. Does this have anything to do with our mysterious guest? And of course the crew have been gossiping. Why would he expect anything different from them? Yes, which is why you can consider this top priority. If you see her do anything out of the norm, I want it noted down for further study in the future. Can do. And then his little bookworm is off, reaching for one of the many books thrown hazardously about the left-hand side of the room. Well, even if Ermin fails to unearth some information from his collection, at the very least they'll have some data by the time Riss leaves them. The promise of something new and esoteric will in the very least prompt Ermin into further study. Today has been peppered with some rather fortuitous discoveries for Law, despite the inconvenience of his unexpected passenger. There is a difference, Riscua has found, between liking a character and liking a person. Like meeting a celebrity. They just don't live up to the hype. Perhaps it's because she's not Luffy, because she's not got Luffy with her and there's no inherent magnetism to anything she does, not like what Luffy is capable of. There's no question about where she and Law stand in her mind, because while he may someday become allied with the Straw Hat Pirates, while someday they may end up fighting against Doflamingo's tyranny side by side, I'm going to find the One Piece and become the Pirate King. As things stand now, Law is a rival, an obstacle that stands between Luffy and his dream. Law had spoken with conviction, a rare certainty she hasn't heard outside of Luffy speaking of his dream, of Sabo declaring his desire for total revolution. It had not been the words of a man willing to give up. Rescue is not blind, she can see Law is most certainly a man, all tall and brooding, dark hair and darker eyes. There's an intensity to his gaze that makes his reappearance in her future as a Straw Hat Pirate undeniable. Be it as a determined young man looking to avenge someone who gave him the world, or a ferocious pirate ready to fight Luffy for that peerless, precious title. It's what has Rescue on high alert, a constant reminder that no matter how much she had liked a two-dimensional character housed within paper pages, Trafalgar Law is ultimately a threat to Luffy, a threat to her little brother's dream. And while there might be no stopping herself from growing somewhat attached to someone she may have to one day fight in order to secure Luffy's dream, she can at least keep any kind of amiability they come to cultivate at a reasonable level. A level which she'd have no problem overcoming in order to protect Luffy's dream if it comes down to it. They're both pirates, even if Rescue hasn't officially started yet. For people like them, they have to have their own set of priorities. Luffy, Sabo and Ace come before anything else in Rescue's world. Whatever friends she comes to hold close next, which is then followed by her dream. Just like she has her priorities, so too will Law. His crew, his dream, his desire to see justice for Don Quixote Rocinante. She has no real idea what kind of order those priorities will be in, if there are more that she's missed from that last, but she's certain that in the end, Law and Luffy will clash. Luffy will never, relinquish his desire of becoming Pirate King. And while she cannot say the same thing of Law with complete certainty, it can be agreed that the captain of the Heart Pirates isn't likely to throw that goal aside for one little thing or another. All that means is that Rescue cannot afford to lower her guard here. She will not risk Luffy's dream. He's really sucked me in, huh? She whispers to herself, shaking her head. It had always been surprising, albeit heartwarming, how breathtakingly sure the Straw Hat Pirates had been when it comes to Luffy's ability to achieve his dream. How strongly they defended him and his goal. Yet, here she is, thinking the exact same thing. Her little brat of a brother is something else altogether. A lance of longing laces through her heart at the thought of him. How many days, weeks, months has it been since she saw his cheery face? Too long is the answer. Shall remain the answer until she next sees his face again. Luffy is incredibly selfish when it comes to him and his, and Rescue. She's not any different. If her choice was to save hundreds of strangers or save Luffy, she'd save Luffy every time. Because losing him is not an outcome she'd be able to live with. When it comes to heroes and villains, Rescue is well aware she could never be classed as the former. She could never set aside that what she considers precious just to help people she doesn't know. Oh, she would offer aid, but only if such an action does not threaten what she loves. She'd leave a country to burn if it meant helping Luffy, and that is a dangerous kind of loyalty. Just as worrying, she is certainly not the only person in this world to ever experience such a feeling. All sorts of people are tied to others. Navigating this huge messy web of emotion is incredibly difficult to do if you're trying to avoid making any waves, trying to avoid being noticed. So Rescue isn't going to bother trying. She'll protect Luffy and Sabo and Ace, because they are what are most important to her. Which means that, while she can get along with Law, it's best not to get too attached. Stretching out in the charming little hammock she'd been assigned, Rescue gives a moan of relief as the muscles in her shoulders awaken, the tingling burn that comes with the motion singeing beneath her skin. It's difficult, waking up in the sub. It's all artificial lighting beneath the surface of the waves. Even acknowledging that makes Rescue twitch. For all of her bravado yesterday, she knows escape wouldn't come easy. She's a strong swimming, but she has no idea just how far beneath the waves they are, has no idea if she'd even be able to swim to the surface in time. It's not exactly a skill set she'd ever thought she'd need. Something which evidentially needs to be rectified sharpish. Increasing her lung capacity if possible, bettering her ability to hold her breath. Both are quite important. Searching around the cabin for her trousers, Rescue grimaces at the thought of pulling them on without underwear. but they're washing in the sink, accompanied by her bra, so she hasn't got much choice. It's a good thing she's relatively flat-chested, given she's got no other option for clothing. She refuses to wear the Heart Pirate's uniform, not when it holds a Jolly Roger she will never, sail under. Entering the little ensuite adjoined to the room she'd been given, Riskua lets the tap run, splashing the cold water against the warmth of her cheeks. It's unusual for a ship to have a cabin with an ensuite, but she assumes it's meant for any visitors of significant importance. Though what kind of guests Law entertains, Riskua cannot even begin to guess. She has to hold a hand to her black wig in order to brush it, the strand's a mess given how she'd not dared to sleep without it. While Law and his female crewmate may have bore witness to her natural coloring, she has no need to risk anyone else seeing it. When that is all straightened out, Riskua pulls open her brown shirt, tucking it into the fabric of her belt and testing her movement. Someone upon Law's ship has stitched a brown patch over the bullet wound. The only visible reminder of her current condition is one ignores the actual wound. The stitches pull at her skin, but this body heals much faster than the one from before. Still, Law had informed her that he wishes to conduct a quick checkup to ensure all is healing correctly the previous night, so it is to a checkup she will allow, if only to make sure she's going to be a-okay. The steady thrumming of her heartbeat beneath her breastbone lets her know Law hasn't stolen it, maybe hasn't even become capable of such a feat yet. Hey, that is a justifiable concern, given that she really doesn't know what he wants from her, other than information. And she's really not sure of just how much of that she's willing to hand out. On the bed, Riskua. The twitch to demand a please is there, an innate instinct from years of attempting and failing to correct Luffy. Little monkey never learns. Snuffing out that little candle of irritation, Riskua hopes up onto the mockery of a hospital bed. It's bolted to the floor, ensuring it won't roll and sway with the motion of the waves. After a moment of thought, she lies down too, rolling her top up enough to expose the flesh of her midriff, specifically the wound on her side. It's ugly and red, the stitches simple black thread, but they're also the only neat thing about the whole injury. From appearance alone it appears there's no infection present, but given that you were found in the sea, I want to be sure, so I'll be scanning you. That Riskua gets before a blue film expands outwards from Law, encasing a good portion of the room within a transparent dome. She's well aware of what exactly a room is capable of, her arms crossing over her chest as she fails to find something to do with them. Her head is tilted to a side, observing Law and every motion he makes. She's relatively certain she'd be quick enough to punch him with armament, but it's a question of if she can escape the room before he recovered enough from the blow to really use his powers against her. No infection, Law verifies, snapping on a pair of rubber gloves before gently pressing his fingers to her side. She hasn't seen a medical professional in so long that the touch has her cringing back slightly, despite the sting of pain it brings about from her injury. Law's hands are completely clinical, nothing to indicate that it is anything other than the professional contact of a doctor. It still has Riskua's breathing stuttering slightly, tongue darting out to lick at her dry lips as she forces herself to not look away, to watch what this pirate does. "What are you looking for?" Riskua finally asks, blundering through the weighty silence with little to no remorse, not able to really stand remaining quiet. It's not the same kind of comfortable silence she gets to experience with Sabo, or hell even Ace on the off chance he'd been in a good mood. Law isn't someone she can just sit and appreciate the physical presence of, and that has nothing to do with his appearance. There's no denying the man is physically attractive, but then, the vast majority of men in her life are. Any unusual heat from the affected area, any discrepancies in the skin that weren't present before, other such things. Law's eyes flick up, head having tilted forwards while he conducted his inspection of her side, and she forces herself to meet his gaze from behind the colored lens of her goggles. "And is there any? No, you're in luck, Riskua. That one will heal up just fine, now pants off." Riskua chokes slightly, the reminder that her underwear is currently stewing in a soap-filled sink hitting her with the blunt force of a sledgehammer. "You got a privacy cloth? Because it's one thing being naked with Sabo and Koala, both of whom she knows and one she really trusts, but this is something else entirely." A smirk licks at the corners of Law's lips, still staring up at her from beneath the cover of his eyelashes, only now he's taken to cradling his cheek with one hand, elbow resting on one jean-clad leg. Black underwear is simple but practical, yeah. I've seen it already. If I don't get some kind of covering, you'll see a whole lot more than the underwear that's off getting a wash right now. Her hand clenches around the edge of the bed. She can barely remember unfolding her arms, never mind taking a grip of the metal framework. But the groan as it crumples beneath her grip is orotund. Gold irises abort their challenge to analyze the perfect imprint of her hand. Riskua's fingers retreating to rest upon her torso once again as Law abandons their stare down. Another awkward moment of silence descends as Riskua crosses and uncrosses her legs, inhaling a long breath in the delay. Fingers snap and then Law is holding out a cloth, smirk notably absent. Whenever you're ready, Risya. Law, in the very least, has the decency to turn his back while she shimmies out of her trousers. While Riskua is completely confident in her ability to defend herself butt-ass naked, that doesn't necessarily mean she wants to do so. Nevertheless, when the cloth is settled, she takes a moment to inspect her thigh, having not wanted to look too closely the night before. Knowing a bullet has been removed from her limb and seeing the stark evidence are two different things altogether. It had been bad enough having to look at the entry wound in her flank yesterday. Settling the long swath of fabric across her waist, the redhead pulls it down until it comes to a stop just before the wound, managing to cover a third of her thigh. It's enough of a cover that she feels comfortable, to the point she adjusts the bed herself so that she can sit back against the now raised half of the mattress. "Do make yourself comfortable," Law snipes sarcastically, exchanging his gloves for a fresh pair. Understandable, fresh wound, fresh gloves. Lowers the risk of infection, so Riskua is not about to complain. "Isn't a doctor supposed to be considerate of a patient's needs?" She parries back, flexing her toes in the open air, having seen no need to put her boots back on once her trousers were off. "You'll find I'm a pirate, first and foremost, Law drawls, and your comfort means nothing to me." "Not even a little bit?" The smirk is back, Law dropping the conversation in favor of inspecting her other bullet wound. "Damn Marines," Riskua thinks with a disgruntled frown, fortifying herself for the moment Law's fingers brush against her leg. The touch is exactly the same, technical and practiced, inspecting the skin held together by neat black stitches. He follows the same motions as what occurred while he was inspecting her side, only Riskua is hyper-aware of just how personal this seems in comparison. "I'm going to check how it responds to muscle movement," Law explains, trailing his fingers down her leg to take a grip of her ankle with one hand, eyes still focused upon the injury he treated. Despite all her time with Luffy, rubber isn't exactly a texture she's used to having press up against her leg, and Riskua swallows back the moisture that's flooded into her mouth. She keeps her leg limp, allowing Law to manipulate the joints of her knee and hip, moving her ankle up and down to see how her quadriceps react. "Tense your leg." Riskua does as requested, ignoring the jolt of pain that sears through her thigh. This feels remarkably unreal. She's sat in the medical bay of a submarine, captained by a rising pirate several years older than her who's not entirely unattractive. Oh, and she's got no pants on. Riskua bets Uncle Mahawk and Papa would have a few choice words, and actions, most probably actions, to express exactly what they think of such a thing, and that startles a laugh out of her. Just thinking what my father would say about the current situation." The hand on her ankle freezes in place, thumb still pressing into the tight tendon it had been inspecting in a slow rub. It suddenly feels thrice as oppressive in the room, and she has half an inkling as to why. She wonders if he's just running by the unmistakable appearance of her eyes, or if he's dug a bit deeper and pinned the crimson of her hair to the incredibly famous pirate with the exact same shade. "It appears there's no long-term problems that you could end up suffering from, Risya. Just a few days rest until you're all healed up, given your increased rate of healing." "Excuse me, increased what's it?" Straightening from where he'd been hunched over her leg, Law peels the rubber gloves off of his hands with a set of crisp snaps, throwing one arm behind him to rest upon the chair back. "In comparison to the regular rate of human healing, you're further on than I would have expected, even when taking into account you're in peak physical condition." Instantly Riskua's mind jumps to her hockey. Is this an instinctual reaction that has come about because she's injured? She's aware Conqueror's responds to emotional stress. It's the only common factor she's been able to find regarding that hockey's activation so far, using both herself and Ace as her case studies. Could her haki be responding unconsciously to the pain, prompting the body to heal faster? Does willpower have any standing when it comes to physical healing? She's well aware of the placebo effect that can occur under drugs, of the body believing it is getting the help it needs so it gets better in response to the positive thoughts the brain gives off. Perhaps her haki is responding a similar strain, flushing through the body and prompting it to heal like hormones do, maybe even amplifying the SKR. What an incredibly fascinating thought. It has Riskua itching to start making notes, to get out of this little med bay and find something to start scribbling in despite the lethargy in her limbs. First she needs to get her pants on, she recalls, turning back to face her temporary doctor. Law's face has fallen into a shade of disgruntlement, fingers drumming against the leather back of his chair as he frowns at her. It also brings into question how you managed to continue moving when the bullet lodged in your thigh was pressing up against a raw nerve. That kind of pain should be crippling. It wouldn't be the first time that Riskua has moved onwards while experiencing pain, though a sprained ankle during childhood is probably quite different to uncovered force upon a raw nerve. It gives her something else to potentially look into though, so this whole thing has been rather fruitful. Do you have a blank notebook I could write in? Law has stood up now, throwing her trousers over by hooking a good portion of the material on the edge of his sheathed sword. Only if I get to read it, Risya. Of course. She has no problem with that, after all. She doubts he'll be able to crack the code that is English in her short stay here. We will be arriving in Barmork come dawn, Risya. The dismissal is clear and Law leaves her alone in the room to pull her pants back on. Riskua spends the rest of her day in the privacy of her cabin, scribbling away long into the evening and maybe even the night. It's hard to tell given how they're below the surface of the ocean. She doesn't think on that too much. It still inspires an increasing sense of unease, leaves her itching to look upon the sky, to peer at its great blue stretch of freedom once again. Hell, she'd settle for a mottled mess of clouds in varying shades of gray by this point. Law, in a moment of generosity ill-suited to the snarky man she's found herself acquainted with, had sent his female crewmate up with a space set of clothes. Riskua fully intends to spend the emergency roll of berry she'd had stuffed into the side of her bra strap on an outfit and a few pairs of panties now that they have arrived at Barmork. One day without has been uncomfortable enough already. Pulling on the sleek red top that had been handed to her, Riskua smooths the fabric down and does her very best not to scowl in annoyance. On a busty lady, basically, any other damn woman Riskua has either met or seen in this life. This top would show off a tantalizing amount of cleavage. On her, the point of the V-neck comes to a halt at her solar plexus, and should she lean forwards, everything would be visible from the sides. Not that she's really got much for anyone to look at. Staring forwards without really seeing anything, Riskua sighs, reaching for the dark pair of skinny jeans. At the very least, Law's female crewmate has good taste, and the redhead takes just a bit of satisfaction from the fact she has to wiggle her hips into the unforgiving fabric. She might not have a whole lot of bust, but the curve of her hips and ass are nothing to scoff at. Tucking the top in ensures there'll be no unwanted flashing, and after a moment's hesitation, Riskua fishes out the little golden necklace that usually rests beneath her shirt, allowing the pendant and the pearl a chance to appreciate the light of the day for once. She's as dressed as she's going to get, so after quickly pulling on her boots, Riskua makes for the gallery and, hopefully, breakfast. Barmork is, what a shocker, cold. Riskua is not even sure why she's surprised as she huddles deeper into the very first purchase she made upon this island. A dark brown coat, made of the thickest material she could find. She has been walking along beside Law, who had shot her a single questioning look, no doubt wishing to inquire why she'd chosen to hang around with him when the entirety of the town was open to her. Officially, neither one of them have any bounties, though that's sure to change soon enough. Regardless, that is possibly the only reason why no one attempts to stop their progression through the town center. Riskua's eyes dart back and forth, across all of the merchants that are out and about, around all the stalls and all the shops, looking for anything reasonably interesting as her brain whirls. When setting out from base with Sabo, they'd agreed to meet upon notice exactly 10 days later if they were separated at any point. Though it had never been explicitly said they'd leave the other behind if they failed to make the meeting point, it had been in the undertone of the conversation. As things stand though, Riskua knows both herself and Sabo well enough to accept neither of them would leave without the other. Which means if he's not at notice on the agreed upon day, She won't even think about returning to Baltigo without him. Even if means searching all of this damn cold-ass sea to find him. Why are you still here, Risya? It's a question camouflaged as a complaint and Riskua hums under her breath, fingers curling tighter around the shopping bags containing her new clothes. Why would I leave? It's not like I was forcibly kidnapped and your next stop is the very island I need to be at. You don't feel endangered being among a pirate crew? It's not said with any real concern. In fact, there's more than a drop of amusement in there, and sure enough, when she glances at Law's face, she finds him smiling. Well, smirking. Smiling is too gentle of a word to be used in conjunction with this man. I feel endangered being stood out in the open street, Riskua confesses, especially given the fact you've confiscated my daggers. I will be getting those back, right? When we're rid of you, of course. You say that like I'm a disease, she snorts. Well, if the shoe fits, shut up. You're a grumpy pirate and you're not allowed to have a sense of humor. I'll try to reel it in for the duration of your stay, Risya, Law teases dryly. One finger tapping at the length of sword he rests upon one shoulder. Probably the reason why the crowds are parting around them. That or Law's intimidating 6-foot-something frame. Given this isn't the Grand Line, there's no abundance of beyond 6-foot-tall people, and as such it appears Law is at the higher end spectrum of height here in North Blue. Where are we going? For food. The crew will handle the supplies, and rumors are best heard in bars, after all. Law stops by the entrance of a tavern just as he finishes speaking, smile crooked as he pushes open the door and walks through, long winter coat swishing with the motion. Riskua watches him go for a second before rolling her eyes, sliding in through the threshold after him. The inside of the bar is fantastically warm compared to the town it resides in, to the point Riskua is reaching for the zipper of her jacket right away. While it's possible he has visited this island before, Riskua thinks that Law's confidence in navigating the building comes more from the fact that all North Blue bars are cut from the same cloth. With quick steps, she catches up to his lengthy stride, sliding onto a bar stool as he comes to a stop by the counter. They're tall seats, putting her at the same eye level that Law achieves by standing. I want it on record that I haven't ever paid for a meal in my life, Riskua opens with, adjusting the collar of her borrowed shirt as she shrugs out of her coat. You've never eaten out before? Dine in dashes. Not all of us are such upstanding citizens as yourself. She actually misses the rush that comes with fleeing the bill, but she can hardly do such a thing now when she's trying to keep a low profile. How disappointing. I am not paying for your meal and this is not a date, Law grinds out, seating himself stiffly beside her. I wasn't asking you to, and why would this be a date? I don't have time for that right now. She's going to be meeting up with Sabo soon to get back to work, and while Law is unquestionably appealing, that'd be a stupid route to go down. As long as we're on the doesn't dignify Law's comment with an answer, instead ordering a glass of mango juice and the pub speciality for her meal, dropping one elbow onto the table, hand catching her cheek as she tilts her head to examine it. Law. He's scanning the room as it is, eyes lingering on the Marines in the corner who are eyeballing the two of them quite extensively. Understandable, Law's sword, dark appearance and earrings undoubtedly scream, pirate, to those that pay attention, but to her knowledge he has no bounty yet, so they have no real reason to come after him. It doesn't stop Riskua from reaching for her concealment though. It's tricky, not just wrapping it around herself but instead setting it as a blanket between the Marines and both she and Law. She manages though, and the world government's forces stop staring at them, even getting to their feet to leave now that their glasses are finished. It is only after a puzzled moment that Riskua realizes the concealment she's thrown up must be coating the bar as well. Oops. Releasing her grasp on her hockey once they're out the door, she slumps further into her chair, accepting the glass of mango juice the waitress places down before her. What was that? What was what? Grinning around the rim of her glass, Riskua lifts her brows in response to Law's flat look, his own hand wrapped around a mug containing frothing alcohol. You're a doctor, shouldn't you know that alcohol is bad for you? Only when drunk in excess. I want my questions answered, Risya. Swallowing another mouthful of juice, Riskua gently places the glass upon the countertop, pressing the side of her face further into her hand. Perhaps it had been a bit hopeful of her to think if she ignored Law he wouldn't ask. You might have helped me out, Captain Law, but I'm not about to give away all my cards. What is hockey, Risya? The general understanding is that it's a mysterious power found within every living thing in the world. A manifestation of willpower, so to speak. Given that is the only description I've ever been able to get off of people, you can perhaps understand why I feel the need to study it further. Downing the last of her juice, Riskua places the empty glass upon the countertop and awaits Law's response, fingertips drumming out a nameless beat upon the wooden surface. And what, pray tell, are the applications of such a power? Well, there's an ability to sense spiritual energy and one to use life force to form a spiritual armor, so to speak. Taking one quick glance around the tavern, Riskua plucks up one of the metal ashtrays that pepper every surface available, allowing her hands to turn a noticeable black as she effortlessly crushes the receptacle. Law's eyebrows shoot up, a spark of recognition on his face as she releases the mangled remains of her demonstration. Those are the two common variations of hockey, and the uncommon? Well, there's little harm in telling him about that one. Conqueror's hockey, one you have to be born with. There's no training that'll unlock that variation unless you've already got it. And the uncommon that you don't have to be born with? Well, she'll give him points for persistence and realizing she was leaving things out. The waitress places their meals down upon the countertop and scurries off, though Riskua only really catches the motion from the corner of her eyes. She's too busy locked in a stare down with Law, a frown upon her face. In fact, she's told him more than enough. You're very good at word games, Captain Law, but I thought the whole, asking about another's interests usually happens on a date, which this is not. Frowning at her very blatant dismissal of his questions, Law plucks up his own cutlery, stabbing into the fish, though hot gold never stops burning into Riskua's side. Friends tell each other secrets, Risya. We're not friends. I'm going to join a pirate crew and there's no question of my captain achieving that revered status as Pirate King. That puts us at odds, Law. That smirk is back as he keeps chewing, posture relaxed. You're not a pirate yet, Risya. Why make it harder for myself in the long run? The smirk widens but Law says nothing in return, clearing giving it up as a bad job. No doubt trying to scheme up another angle to come at her secrets from. Quite unable to help the small smile on her lips, Riskua turns her attention back to her meal. It'll be the first one in a long while that she gets to enjoy without having to fight off thieving hands, after all. Though having to actually cough up the cash to pay for it sucks. Barmork had sunk into the distance days ago, and now that they are 48 hours out from notice, Law has blessedly decided to keep the sub at the surface for the first time during her stay here. The fur collar of her coat pulled up to buffer her neck from the harsh bite of the wind, Riskua wraps her hands tighter around the metal railings. Part of her is even tempted to leave an imprint of her hands, physical proof that she was here, aboard the Puller Tang. It's very tempting, but she pushes the desire back and down, forces herself not to. Instead, she inhales deeply, feeling the chill of the north blue air roll through her lungs, filling her chest. The halitis she expels comes into being as white mist, curling before her lips like dragon's breath, and the reminder of Sabo sends a pang of worry through her. Is he okay out there in North Blue on his own? Of course he is. She reprimands herself, shaking her head ferociously. He's been a member of the Revolutionary Army for over a year now. He's got by without her before, of course he's fine. Just because they'd been forced to keep their abilities on the down low when fighting Marines does not mean they cannot look after themselves. Not that either one of them would keep it subtle while the other is in danger, while their lives are in danger. Their own lives are of more importance than not receiving a bounty poster, of not being slapped with the tag, revolutionary, by the government. It means they'll be hunted like dogs, but if they're alive, Riskua can live like that. Heavy thoughts. Riskua cocks her head back to look at Law, chewing on her lips while she forces herself to let go of the railing. No need to risk leaving grooves behind when she's done so well not leaving her mark already. The hospital bed doesn't count, not really. Just worried about thing I can't make an impact on right now. Would you like to spar, Risya? Twitching at the thought, Riskua turns her full attention to Law, leaning back so that her elbows rest upon the Puller Tang's railings, forearms pressing into the curve of her waist and hands by her hip bones. Law has her shorter daggers in his hands, a challenging smirk upon her face, and however is she supposed to say no to that? The idea of exercise, of losing herself in the adrenaline rush of a good fight sounds incredibly appealing right now. Sure you're okay with fighting, Dr. Law? Stressing one of his many titles, Riskua reaches out for her daggers, scowling when Law lifts his arm right up, so they're well out of her range. Not quite in your reach, Yaw, hearty har har, you're hilarious. Riskua leaps. If it's just a bit empowered by hockey, and if she leaves a deep depression of her feet in the metal, then it's his own damn fault for teasing her. That she ends up 30 or so feet further in the air than she wanted is a bit irritating, but she still manages to stick the landing, if not in the same spot on the deck as she'd been stood. Her daggers, the ones Mihawk had gifted her for her birthday, are once again in her grasp, and she draws them from their sheaths, twisting the blades about in her grasp. Riskua flips them about, listening to their sharp edges whistle through the air. Her side aches, but this is in a world where serious wounds heal in weeks as opposed to months. Law has already stated her rate of healing is much greater than he'd have expected of another woman in her health bracket, and the redhead will admit to giving herself a paper cut or two, noting down just how long they took to heal. She grins at the memory of her notebook, or more specifically, the memory of Law's face when he had tried reading it. The grump. Still sure you want to spar? Riskua asks, falling into a tried and tested stance, one dagger extended towards the captain and the other held close to her chest. Blade to blade, nothing else. No hockey. No devil fruit, damn. Riskua had rather been hoping that she'd be able to get a gauge on how to Oppo fruit works, but just as she wishes to give nothing away when it comes to her hockey, Law himself is doing the exact same thing. Neither of them will give the other a chance to study their powers, because study means an understanding, and an understanding means you can start to work against them. Oh well, there'll be time for that in the future, maybe. In a flash of blades, they go at each other. While he's nowhere near as skilled, fighting with Law reminds her of Mihawk. Maybe it's just the fact they're both significantly taller than her, maybe it because they both use swords as their chosen weapon of choice, but the similarities are there. At the same time, it's something completely different. She can see now, see why Mihawk is classified as the world's greatest swordsman. Whereas Law just comes at her. Mihawk sees all. He sees her flaws, sees her moves, and he takes steps to enhance them. He's been teaching without her even realizing it. The amount of skill that takes is incredible. It's a shame there won't be an annual meet-up this year, what with her having left the island. Riskua twists, ducking low under the swing of Law's blade, coming up with a closed fist uppercut that Law only just manages to dance out of the way of. She's better than him, but that's not exactly a surprise. Law is no close-quarters fighter, more long-ranged given his powers. Riskua has fought at nothing but close range before. She has little to no long-distance attacks other than throwing her daggers at the enemy. Even that'd only be good for 2 shots. She should probably look into the whole long-distance thing actually. Either that or figure out a way to get up close and personal fast. Her head is far too full of lots of different thoughts, and the disguised redhead swears as Law manages to nick her arm, blood dotting the surface of the polar tang. First blood to me, Yaw. Oh, it is on. She beats him, though it's not much of a surprise. For all that he's crafty, Law isn't exactly a close-range fighter. He's had his devil fruit for so long that fighting without it isn't easy for him. And Riskua had taken ruthless advantage of that. Regardless of their very different skill sets though, it had been a good spar. Really, she should be doing that more often. Maybe Sabo will be willing to volunteer himself up for hockey testing, to see how she can better apply it in battle. Because while Riskua is aware she's discovered a few possible uses for the mysterious power, her abilities to use anything but armament and observation in battle are nowhere near as smooth as she'd like, if any use at all. She really needs to look into this healing rate Law mentioned when she gets back. Adjusting the dial of the microscope she has balanced on her leg, Riskua peers into the lens, squinting at the cell structure of her hair. She'd plucked a portion free and placed part within a glass slide, the red strand sticking partway out so she can still rest her finger upon it. Finishing up the very rough sketch of the usual cell, it's a painful shame her ability to draw hasn't carried over. Oh, she can copy things well enough, but she hasn't really developed her drawing ability in this life, and it's showing now. She exhales, long and low, before coating the strand of hair in armament. The whole lens goes dark and Riskua swears, "What the hell?" Peering into the glass, squinting at the visual it offers doesn't change anything. Coated in armament, the cell of her hair is no longer visible. In fact, She can't see nothing at all, only black. Well hell. Cocking her head to a side, Riskua recalls everything she can about the color black, how light reacts to it, and then everything to do with this particular branch of Haki. Armament is spiritual armor, it's something to do with force, and it turns the affected black when used to its full potential. It can be used to strengthen a blow, or to protect the body from an attack. Armament creates a spiritual armor that can deflect a certain amount of force, perhaps equivalent into how much willpower is put into the creation of said armor. Something to test later. Though is that when in use, armament turns the whole thing black. The spiritual armor is absorbing every last ray of light that hits it, and that's why Riskua isn't able to see Jack's squat through her borrowed microscope. There's been times she's used armament though and her limbs haven't gone black. Is there a secondary level that activates armament's ability to absorb all light? Is it just the light spectrum? Or could it be all other spectrums? UV rays? Could armament Haki be used to somehow prevent sunburn? It makes sense in retrospect, but now it's opened up a whole other list of things for Riskua to look into. She needs to ask Dragon for some scientific equipment when she gets back to base. What are you doing, Riskua? Snapping to attention, Riskua releases her hold on the armament Haki, sheepishly setting the microscope down. There's a distinctive imprint in the material of her pants where the heavy device had been resting, but she tactically ignores that. Law's leaning against the door frame, the ever-present Kikoku propped up against his shoulder while his eyes remained shadowed by the wide brim of his fluffy hat. Not everyone has access to scientific equipment, Riskua mumbles, shrugging her shoulders and refusing to meet the other's gaze. I'm just making the most of my time here. Studying this, Haki, studying armament. The one that turns your skin black, murmurs Law, and there's something odd in his tone. Nodding, the motion particularly slow as she tries to figure out just why Law is a tad more interested in that than the other side she's told him about. Riskua relaxes back onto the sofa she'd taken up residency on. Would a cross-section of your arm help? What? Rapidly overcoming her statement over such an offer, Riskua weighs up the pros and cons of such a thing. She'll never get another chance to understand how Haki works through a living limb, not without Law's powers. Not unless she meets someone with the ability to make things invisible, and even then they'd have to be skilled enough to only get part of her arm and that all of it, she won't be able to get a chance like this anywhere else. The only issue is, whatever she discovers, Law will learn too. And while he might not have the knowledge to put those findings to use right now, there's always a chance he could do so in the future. So the question is, does Riskua risk this or not? Luffy may always ally himself with Law in the future, but then again, he may not. If they do and she gets a second chance for this in the future, Law will have more knowledge of Haki then and be capable of drawing quicker conclusions. Here and now, he might forget key points before he can really use them. If you're offering, then yes please. Swallowing down the nerves that roll in her stomach at the blatant acceptance, at the fact she's opening herself up to Law's powers, Riskua steels herself and offers her arm up. You don't need to hold your arm out, Law chuckles, slinking into the room before smoothly sitting himself upon the couch. Why do you even have a sofa in a medical bay anyway? Riskua asks, determined to take her mind off of being so exposed to this pirate's whims. It's nagging at her. Whenever one of those idiots make a mess of each other, one of them'll wait on the couch and watch as I fix the other up. Oh, so it's punishment then. Riskua doesn't feel a thing when Law takes a slice from her arm, and then suddenly she's looking at a cross-section of her biceps right in front of her. Wait, I don't know if Haki affects your devil fruit. Just take a little skin first. Because if she turns on the Haki and it cancels out Law's power, Riskua'll end up looking even more like her father with a missing left arm. Alright. A snap of tattooed fingers and the cross-section is replaced with a small graft of skin, the original home which doesn't so much as twitch when Riskua consciously coats it in armament. It's weird as hell to see that black bit of skin floating in front of her face, especially given that she still has sensation in it, that she can still feel it when she pokes at the flesh. She ignores the terrifying implication that armament cannot stop Law's devil fruit powers. Does the Ope just defy all the rules? The cross-section now, Riskua? If you'd be so kind, Captain Law. He smirks, the scalpel he's armed himself with slicing through the air once again, and Riskua peeks forwards to better inspect the sight before her. Is blood still running through her arm? Still pumping through her heart? She can see the veins and arteries shuddering slightly, so she assumes that is the case. Law's devil fruit powers are the strangest ones she's ever come across. Scientifically, they make no sense whatsoever. The whole thing makes her head hurt, so she studiously ignores it, instead focusing on the power she's actually trying to research, her haki. Flexing that spiritual energy within her, Riskua lets her eyes close and pushes it outwards, as she would normally do when using armament to its maximum capacity. Once she's relatively certain she's got a hold on it, she flicks her eyes open to see what her blind test run. After all, an attempt without her sight means there'll be no bias on what she wants to see, has resulted in. Which is the entirety of her arm completely black. The bones, the muscles, the skin, even the blood. It's all black, and Riskua allows a low whistle to pass through her lips. So armament supplements the entirety of the limb then? Law muses from beside her, leaning forwards with brilliant gold eyes inspecting the little slice of her limb he'd removed. Riskua pokes at the exposed muscle, the exposed bone, releasing the haki to get a better feeling of the different. While the bone hadn't changed, still feeling hard and solid beneath her touch. The muscle gives far more than what it had done while armamented. The sensation of poking her own muscle has Riskua shivering. Drawing her hand back, the disguised redhead twists at her haki and, after a moment of focus, manages to only coat the bone, putting it on and off, before trying the same thing with the muscle. It's something to consider. Does one instinctively support the entire arm with haki? What would happen if it was just muscle being armamented? If it was just bone or just skin? Another thing to look into, that's for sure. She wants to see how it will react to concealment, if that sinks into the entirety of the body too, or if it just surrounds the outer surface. But she's not about to give away one of her trump cards while Law is present. Curiosity settled. Riskua? My curiosity will never be sated, Riskua grumbles, finishing up her quick scribbles into the little notebook Law has given her, capping the pen top with a swift movement of her fingers. A quick look at her arm, she grimaces at the blatant empty space between limb and self. It's weird as hell. Don't worry, you'll get your arm back in working order just fine, Law promises slyly. A swift movement of his fingers and suddenly she's whole again. Riskua lets out a sigh of relief, rolling up the sleeve of her arm to check, but yes, it all seems to be back in working order. Still, when Law reaches to take a careful hold of her upper arm, she allows it. Rough, long fingers work over the skin of her upper arm, ensuring that the small section he'd removed is all back in working order. No pain? No loss of sensation? No problems as far as I can tell, Riskua admits, watching Law trail his fingers down the curve of her triceps, short, blunt nails scraping at parts of her skin, as if testing to see if she's still registering all the same sensations as he had a half hour ago. You can tell the difference between that? Law asks, and Riskua nods, shifting slightly so that she can cross one leg over the other, suddenly quite uncomfortable. Yep, scratch and then a press. You say that like you don't check you put your crew back together, right? It's not exactly like I'm going anywhere for them to be incapable of finding me with a problem. Riskua, Law drawls, flick her arm one last time, and his face is very close to hers. Not quite sure if she dares to move, Riskua stares at Law, who's staring right back. She hadn't really noticed how stark a difference there was between the color of his irises and the black of his pupils until now, when they're suddenly much, much closer than before. Law, what are you? Riskua's voice trails off. Her mouth dry as Law's own twitches up in a crooked smirk, lower lip rolling slightly as his tongue darts out to wet the flesh there. He is very, very close. The tip of his nose is a light presence against hers, a shallow nudge, quick as a hummingbird. Then there's lips working across hers, and Riskua's mind goes blank. It's not the romantic pleasure kind, the fairy tale moment. It goes blank because she is lost. So very lost. There is no experience here. Nothing to recall and no situation she can compare this to. This is new. She's not had to deal with a kiss in this life. Not a kiss like this. Sabo's peck had been full of childish innocence and curiosity. There is nothing innocent about this. This kiss that has come about as a serious build-up of actions filled with sexual intent that's only just hitting her now. Like a Grand Line storm, a sudden sea king exploded through the ocean's surface. Even though the signs can be read, Riskua doesn't have the experience. She's missed all the indicators. It makes absolutely no sense why, When Law slowly retreats back and out of her personal space, she follows, leans in to press their lips back together, chases after the touch. There's no fluttering butterflies in her stomach, but she does feel something similar to nausea, if there were ever a pleasant variation of nausea in existence. It rolls in her chest, a burning bundle of nerves that sets her whole body alight. She's hot, too hot. Law's hand is threading through her hair, her actual hair. She can feel the wig tumbling down her back, stripping her of that disguise, of that one layer of security, coaxing her closer. Lips move like tectonic plates, shifting against one another, little earthquakes of sensation crashing out with every graze of half-bitten skin, with every flash of tooth and lap of tongue. Rescue gasps, drawing in a quick breath. This body is petite, too petite. She feels so small, Law's presence feels too large, pressing forwards as she retreats a bit more, until her elbows are the foundations that support her. One hand spread against the sofa cushion and the other tangling into the hem of Law's yellow sweatshirt. She doesn't know if she wants to pull him closer or force him away. It's intimidating, and even if his lips are just on hers, it still feels like he's consuming every inch of her. The hand against the side of her head, the fingers entwined with her hair, they all feel cold against her heated face. A thumb, skin calloused, traces the edge of her hairline, catching at the little wisps of hairs that reside there and never really grow. Rescue leans even further back, until she's half laid, half resting against the arm of the sofa, chest heaving. Law hasn't followed after her. The one hand still cradles the side of her face, the other at the edge of the sofa, fingers curled around the cushion to support his weight. There's a knee resting between hers. Its very presence is intimidating. She wishes Law wouldn't just hover there. Wishes he'd make a decision. Is he on or off? This hesitancy, this uncertainty. It feels like if they stay in this lull of action, she's going to explode. "You're a very interesting person, Ris-ya," Law divulges, eyelids heavy as his tongue washes over moist lips. It's overwhelming, and Rescue can only stare, mouth dry, heart pulsating in what has suddenly become a hollow chest. One she is seemingly no longer capable of filling with air. Somehow Rescue finds the breath necessary to respond. It comes out nowhere near as steadily as she would have liked. "Do you say that to all the girls you get in this position?" "Only the interesting ones." Hands are on her sides now, pressing against her flanks as they edge down to outline the bold curves of her hips. Law has moved onto the sofa fully now, and his fingers dig into the flesh of her hips as he pulls her closer, dragging her down the couch until he's half laid, half crouched between her legs, hands sliding back up her sides and one edging round to press between her shoulder blades. Not quite lying on the sofa, but not completely supported by the hand at her back, Rescue wraps one arm around Law's shoulders, broad shoulders, much broader than her own and stronger too. Her other hand once again coming to curl up in the hem of his sweatshirt. She barely knows what to do, barely knows where to put her hands other than to find some part of Law to grip. He's so close, smelling of antiseptic and ocean spray, of heady cologne and fresh soap. And his lips are right there, so Rescue presses hers against them. Sparks don't fly, do they ever really do so? But there is a sensual warmth, something that increases the pressure in her chest and has her heart thrumming stronger. Her leg comes up, inner thigh brushing against Law's side as he presses down, the motion shocking Rescue enough that she breaks the very distracting kiss. That's daunting. When Law's fingers brush at the hem of her shirt with the intention of lifting it, Rescue's own fingers clamp down with a bruising grip, to the point she can feel the sharp angle of his wrist bone protesting against the harsh treatment. I am not ready to go that far. There is something very exposing and intimate about being stripped of her clothes, and Rescue dislikes that idea immensely. A tense moment of silence persists between the two of them, Law's dark golden eyes boring into hers before a familiar crooked smirk lazily blooms across his face. "I don't need to take your clothes off to give you a good time, Ris-ya." "You sound confident," Rescue grinds out, hating how breathy and weak her own voice sounds, how affected it is simply by the cocksure roll of Law's hips against hers. It'd be a lie to say she isn't affected though, that the grinding isn't causing her breath to hitch, for her nails to dig tightly into Law's shoulder and side. She wants to chase after this, wants to keep going even though it's uncomfortable, even though hiking her leg up around Law's waist to press him closer despite the awkward angle aches, all because it feels good. Her own hips rock, her lips finding Law's collarbones and nipping, tongue darting out across the skin. a motion she abruptly aborts. His cologne gives a pleasantly harsh bite, like a soft slap of winter wind against flushed cheeks. It tastes awful though. Turning her attention to his neck, Riskua sucks, pleasure zinging through her at the low moan that breaks free of his chest. She can barely focus though, scarcely concentrate on the nasty tang of aftershave on her palate, the intoxicating scent from the skin pressed to her nose or the feel of thick dark hair between her fingers. When had her hand even made its way to his hair? It's so difficult not to focus on the steadily increasing pressure between her legs, to not focus on Law's every motion. How his hands grip harder at her sides, guiding her hips to roll with his. It's tiring, exactly like climbing a mountain, and she can see why it's described as reaching a peak. But Law beats her there, pace stuttering and going still, even as she pulls impatiently at his hair. She doesn't even know how to finish that sentence. Don't stop, don't you dare? There's not really much time to think on it though, because one of Law's hands is between her legs, rubbing through pants that she'd sworn were thicker than this. Riskua gasps, curse escaping from where she'd trapped it behind her teeth. Law's smug grin, all she can see as pleasure explodes at his insistent touch. Panting, Riskua falls back against the sofa cushions, letting the leg she'd had wrapped around Law's waist fall bonelessly back down. Satisfied, the muscular forearm that's supporting Law is trembling slightly in re of the fact she's not the only one with a wet stain on her pants. I'd say so, she'd say they're both quite satisfied, actually. It had not been what she'd expected, both less and more at the same time. She wants to analyze, go over her reaction, the sensations she'd just experienced. Her brain is still fogged though, and her pelvis still tingling with pleasurable aftershocks. Well, I'll leave you to rest, shall I? But that's just insulting. Gritting her teeth, Riskua pushes herself up, almost unintentionally shoving Law right off of the sofa altogether. I can rest in my own quarters. It goes unsaid that she doesn't need to rest in here, like she's some kind of weakling he's worn out. She's inexperienced, not feeble. Two very different things. Standing on legs a bit shakier than she'd have hoped of them, walking with little recovery time post-orgasm is clearly not a good idea. Riskua takes one last long look at the very devilish Trafalgar Law before turning on heel, pushing herself towards the door. Ignoring the weakness in her lower half is easy. She's walked away with worse jelly legs from training back on Dawn Island after all. You know where to find me if you feel up for a second round, Riskua, taunts Law, to the point the redhead twists around to scowl at him, looking pointedly to the crumpled black wig she must have ended up lying on. The pirate captain cocks an eyebrow at her and, for a second, Riskua is almost sure he's going to make her ask. But after that small stall, Law throws the remains of her disguise her way, the redhead effortlessly snatching it from the air and messily jamming it back onto her head. Red strands no doubt leak out from beneath straight black, but she's past the point of caring now. She regrets glancing at Law, who's leering smugly, stretched out in a mockery of a satisfied big cat. It was fun, Riskua. Riskua's lips flick up, because it was certainly a lot of things, but yeah, it was. And she means it. Riskua curls up in her hammock, having shimmied out of her pants and stuck them in a sink full of soapy water to soak. She's only in a t-shirt, but it's one she can pull down to cover herself on the off chance someone barges in. Not that she can see anyone doing so right now, but the point remains she's not butt-ass naked, no matter how she'd be far more comfortable being so. Then again, she's in a room on her own, there's no one there that she doesn't know, which is probably why she doesn't have a problem showing some skin. Hell, she'd not minded a lack of clothes when Law had been inspecting her bullet wounds. But that whole situation, there had been emotions involved there that made the idea of removing her clothes, of going further than what they'd done, panic-inducing. The redhead isn't exactly going to lie to herself. It's clear that her time here, in this world, has affected her. She cannot even begin to picture having enough trust in someone to have full sex with them. Not as she is right now. She's got enough trust to do something like that with Sabo. But Sabo's her best friend and there's no sexual spark between them. Not like what she's got with Law, where there's a bit of tension to their every interaction and she'd been blind to miss it before. But Law is going to be Luffy's rival, that much is clear. Even if he doesn't seem like a bad guy. He stopped when she told him she didn't want more, she can't trust him. She's a lot more cautious in this life, that much is obvious, and though it grates, it's just something she's going to have to come to grips with. She has trust issues of letting someone get that close to her. The sexual attraction was still present, oh boy, was that still present, but that wasn't enough to overcome, whatever that had been. Scowling, Riskua flips over and pressing her face into her forearm, huffing out a frustrated breath. So, casual sex is clearly off the tables now. Well, it's not like she has a particularly big sex drive anyway. She'll find someone to have a meaningful relationship with someday. Won't she? Scoffing, the temporary revolutionary lets her eyes flutter closed, lulled to sleep by the gentle motions of the ocean they sail upon. Law has a very strange relationship with beauty. Beauty is a very subjective term, influenced by one's upbringing, by the culture they've been immersed in, and Law. Law finds beauty in places few would dare to look. He finds beauty in his submarine, not in its bold as the sun appearance, but in its abilities, in its promise. Transportation beneath the waves. The polar tang's beauty comes with its ability to shroud him from Doflamingo's ever-expanding reach. The polar tang has a purpose, an important one, and in that purpose Law finds beauty. Because for Law, beauty is all in the subtext and sometimes, come to Flevence, most beautiful land in all of North Blue. Even the prettiest of things can hide ugly toxins beneath the surface. Law's ideal of beauty is very different to others, he's aware of that. Physically, Riss isn't beautiful. But some of the little things she does, they're a pretty enough distraction between ports. Law smirks, recalling the rather delightful sight of Riss walking away on coltish legs. The slight tremor in her step indicator enough of just how affected she'd been by their little encounter. A shame she hadn't been willing to go much further, but he'll take what he can get. Law's a pirate, after all. She's not quite like any other woman he's met. Though have any of them been? Each woman Law has ever visited his attentions upon have all stood out from the crowd, have all not exactly been the definition of beautiful, but there had certainly been something pleasant about them. The flush of Riss' cheeks as he'd brought her to orgasm, the pants and whimpers had all been exquisite. Enough to catch his attention, for a little while that is. She's an interesting woman, and it makes him curious to wonder what kind of man she's sworn herself to work under. What kind of man would she call captain? He looks forwards to meeting this man in the future, this man who Riss claims with such surety will become Pirate King. Perhaps he'll even have a worthy rival. After all, even Gold D. Roger had Shaki, had Whitebeard and had Garp. The Law is in no rush to acquire his own marine adversary. Still, he's noted down to look out for Riss Captain. If he's as promising as she thinks, then perhaps he will make a good ally in his quest to subvert Doflamingo. Tapping his fingers against the solid oak of his desk, Law continues flipping through the latest bounties, starting with the North Blue lot that are of more importance to him right now, then working into the Grand Line. There's updated bounties for one of Big Mom's crew, 2 for Kaido's, and then 6 for the Whitebeards. Not that the last is particularly surprising. Law doesn't believe a month goes by when a Whitebeard pirate gets a bounty change. There's just so many of them. Regardless, he sorts through them all, inspecting one after the other, pausing on one in particular. He's paid attention to Fire Fist's journey before, all for 3 major reasons. 1. A pirate from East Blue exploding into the Grand Line as he has is unusual enough. The second reason is just how fast he manages to storm the first half of the world's most feared sea, and the third reason. The third reason is that this is a fellow child of D. Portgas d'Ace. While Law has never heard of a Portgas family before, no one would claim to be a D if they actually weren't. It's a surefire way to end up on the government's watch list. That's not what holds his attention, nor is it the fact Portgas has managed to up his bounty by another 100 million. No, what has Law's attention is the flash of familiar letters in the bounty picture. Well fuck. He knew he'd seen that tattoo somewhere before, and even if this one reads vertically instead of horizontally, it's clearly a match. 4 letters, 1 crossed out, all in the same font. Even if Riss is significantly smaller and more delicate is stamped upon his arm. Double fuck. How is the woman currently occupying his sub connected to such a notorious pirate? No wonder she's so confident in her skill if she has a history with the until recently rookie pirate who blasted through the first half of the Grand Line. This isn't exactly something Law could plan for. To think Riss has such connections, they're not siblings, that's clear, their appearances are too dissimilar for that. Maybe Riss is a child of D, too. It'd certainly explain why she never gave him her full name. Regardless, one thing is clear. If Law ever comes to the point of needing to betray Riss, he's going to have to be explicitly sure that the risk is worth the reward. Because if she really is close enough to Fire Fist to warrant matching tattoos, is it just them? Are they part of a group? Then she might be close enough that the newest Whitebeard pirate would feel the need to hunt her betrayer down. Law will not be tangling with the crew of the world's strongest man in the near future. Clearly he's going to have to look into the background of these two a little more. That and make it top priority to keep an eye out for Riss Captain in the future. They approach Notice with a generous amount of caution. There is, after all, a far larger marine presence than any sensible pirate of Law's current stature would be comfortable with. The town is clean, incredibly so, and wealthy. To the point he has to push back the image of a near-perfectly white city, has to push back the reminder of Flevence and its amber lead. It lingers though, a haunting recollection of what he had once had, and Law wonders just what dirty secrets lays beneath this city's clean presentation. What dreadful things have they done to obtain such wealth, and what steps are they taking towards retaining that affluence? Do the people who live there know? Are they aware of just where their lifestyle comes from? Because Law hadn't been aware, and he had suffered so much for it. Gives you hives, doesn't it? Riss has snuck up on him, arms folded and resting upon the railing as she stares out at the town. Those striking yellow eyes hidden beneath the tinted lenses once again. Pinpoint black hair frames her face, and devoid of the startling red locks, with the hawk-like eyes hidden, she does look rather pretty. Not the, in-your-face, beautiful of the town before them, but the kind of aesthetic that one must grow used to before it can really be appreciated. Law just has a better time at looking for the hidden beauty than most. Trusting something picturesque is hard, after all. Did you grow up somewhere like this, Riss Yaw? He's already pinned her as a former occupant of East Blue. He recognizes the accent. There's something else in there. A distinctive twinge that he supposes may come from elsewhere, may indicate she's not originally an East Blue native, which isn't surprising given Hawk Eyes and his preference of being within the Grand Line. Still, she has spent a significant amount of time in East Blue, given the accent and the connection with Fire Fist. Something that still has Law a bit confused. ASLR is the tattoo, Portgas Dias and Riss. That's quite possibly the A and the R. Does that mean there are two more of them? Why is the S crossed out? Did one of them die on the outskirts? You don't really appreciate what the rich waste until you're living off the excess they throw away. We mainly hunted for food though. Now that sounds practically barbaric. What kind of place was she living in to have to hunt for food? Had society not moved on since those times? Has the claim of being the Pirate King's home sea really crippled East Blue to the point trade is a foreign concept to them? Surely not. Mayhap it is just the island upon which Riss grew up. For all Law knows, it might be segregated from society itself. Only, if there was a town such as Notice there, then that cannot be the case. But enough of that, Riss decides, leaning further out across the railings, eyes fluttering closed in the face of the kissing wind. For once, it doesn't carry the harsh bite of snow and ice. Instead, the little ZYHPERS can almost be considered warm. It's a pleasant day, that's for sure. Unzipping the top half of his coat, Law sends Beppo a nod when the navigator announces the rowboat they will be taking to Notice is prepared. He's already got the flare hidden beneath his coat, a simple way to announce to the crew whom will be staying upon the Polar Tang that quick getaway is needed, and to bring the sub as close to shore as possible. It pays to have a getaway organized, and Law is all about being organized. Well, Riss Yaw, shall we get going? Holding out the hand not curled around Kokoku, Law wiggles his fingers in the redhead's direction. She smooths down the false black hair she sports, adjusting the bottom of her jacket before placing her gloved hand in his, allowing him to teleport them to the little rowboat via room. The boat doesn't so much as rock when they swap out with a coil of rope, Penguin and Beppo already manning the oars. Law doesn't want to be in this town any longer than he has to. The only reason they'd been on this route to begin with is, as Notice is quite the trading port given its wealth and marine presence, they will probably have good maps. Perhaps even one to get to the Grand Line with. Which would be useful. They've yet to come across one of those yet, and Law is already itching to set off towards that sea. Even if he still needs to be a little more prepared. Maybe it is time to take on a marine base here in North Blue after all. I can sense my friend. Riss' voice interrupts his thoughts and Law cocks an eyebrow. She's not looking at him though, instead staring towards the island before them with a sure smile on her face. Of course, that hockey stuff, observation. He can remember that spread of black across skin from his time with Doflamingo, his time with Khorasan. It is a shame Riss is so dedicated to a captain who has yet to sail. Having someone who knows about this hockey business would be incredibly useful. As things are, Ermin is going to have to put his nose to the ground and research it for them. It's why he's hunched in the rowboat too. The Law highly doubts he'll find anything in notice. No, Ermin is here to take note on anything Riss does that could be related to hockey in any way, shape or form. After all, this is perhaps the last he'll see of her for a while. There's a part of him that is sure he will see her again, upon the Grand Line no doubt. He's rather looking forward to it. When they dock upon notice, Penguin departs with Beppo to the necessary maps, Ermin remaining by their sides. Every step Riss takes is filled with purpose, and though she's never been here before, not once does she hesitate in her determined march forwards, as if she already knows just where she's going. If she is able to lock onto her friend's presence with hockey though, Law assumes it is much like following a compass pointing north. Slow down, Riss yaw. I'm sure your companion isn't going anywhere. The sooner she finds her companion, the sooner she will be out of Law's life once again, taking his best source on all things hockey with them as they depart. Law's eyes slide to the side, where a pair of Marines, clearly on duty, are mistrustfully eyeing the three of them, hands on their pistols. None of them have bounties. Law had looked. There hadn't been one matching Riss' appearance, natural or disguised. So it's probably the fact none of them looking particularly notice-like that has captured their attention. Face set in a challenging frown, Law steps closer to Riss and lays his arm across her shoulder, fingers dancing across the padded material of her coat-clad arm. The Marines? Riss whispers under her breath. Red eyebrows dyed black from a few licks of mascara. Not the ideal cover-up, the woman had complained, but it'd do. It's a shame they arrived in notice so quick, or rather, it's a shame yesterday had been the only time he'd managed to make some progress on seducing the woman. Even if she was only willing to go so far, it'd still be fun, still been a thrill to see her face so flushed, to watch such a strong woman come undue beneath him. Not that he hadn't unraveled for a moment himself, but that was the thing, it happened whenever you were with someone sexual. Even if it wasn't a complete loss of senses, it was enough to fall into something, to forget about everything else for a moment and just appreciate the sensations, to just feel good. We might not have bounty posters, Riss yaw, but apparently we still scream, pirate, to their, well-honed, senses. He uses that term lightly though, while they're not announcing it, they've not exactly taken massive steps to hide that they're pirates either. Well, I guess Riss snaps to attention at the abbreviation of her name, face lighting up with genuine joy as she swings around to the source. Sabo. And then she's off, disappearing out from under his arm to rocket down the street, barreling into 3 or 4 wealthy natives who scream in indignation. Law barely pays them any attention though, eyes tracking Riss as she makes her way through the slight crowds. The crows who are to get out of her way but they're just not fast enough. His lips quirk up as she slams into one startled Marine, body checking him out of the way before she finds her target. The man who catches her is not as tall as Law, though nor is he significantly shorter. In fact, had Riss not flown into his arms, Law wouldn't have been able to pick him out from the regular crowd. His clothes all neat and well tailored. He's even wearing a cravat. Upon impact, the blonde hefts Riss into his arms, spinning the two of them around to bleed of the momentum from their collision before he sets her back on her feet. They check each other over, clearly looking for any kind of injuries, and though there is an almost frantic worry to their movements, it is all completely platonic, something that doesn't change as Law continues to approach them. He stoutly ignores that it could almost be the interactions between a brother and his sister. Or at least Law thinks so, until Riss starts peppering the blonde's cheeks with kisses, balanced on the other man's shoes and reaching up on her tiptoes in order to reach his face. I'm fine. You're more injured than me. I was worried. He speaks well, also with an East Blue accent, and though there's no sensual inclination to his hands they rest possessively upon her back with a clear familiarity. These two are close then. Who the fuck are you? Stopping a few feet from the blonde, Law's grip on Kokoku tightens. Thumb ready to pop the hilt open as the other man reaches for the lead pipe upon his back. Now that he's closer, he can see the other male isn't as old as him, perhaps only a year or so Riss senior. Still, there's a look in that man's eyes that indicates he's done his fair share of bad things, that he's willing to crush anyone that hurts what is his, willing to do almost anything to achieve his goals. Yes, it's not every day you see a man like this in North Blue. Sabo, it's okay, he helped me out, it's not a kidnapping. The scary as fuck blonde is still burning holes in his head though, one gloved hand clenched tight on the metal pipe he'd pulled off his shoulder, the other still holding Riss close to his side. He had attempted to put himself between the two of them, but Riskua clearly hadn't been willing to have any of that. Her hand is on his shoulder, forcibly keeping him in place, and Law can see black in that little slip of skin exposed between Riss' coat sleeve and the material of her glove. Riss' friend is dangerous by her standards, that much is obvious, and hellishly protective of her. I see, the blonde dressed as gentleman says, tone deceptively calm, then I suppose I should give my thanks. Let's get a drink. The invitation isn't a friendly one, but Law's never really been one to back down from anything. He stands tall, straightens out his shoulders, and gives a slow nod. A drink would be acceptable. Beside him, Ermin twitches, dark eyes flicking cautiously between Riss and this Sabo character. Law cannot blame him. Of what he's concluded of hockey so far, it is a dangerous power, on a threat level with another devil fruit user. It's clear if this comes down to a fight, it will be himself and Ermin against the two of them, because for all he and Riss had been getting along, it's clear her loyalties to her friend trump any goodwill he has managed to earn. That's the way the world works though. Law can't exactly say he wasn't expecting it. Regardless, it would be nice if they could part on good terms. I know a pub. The pub Sabo takes them to is generic, the kind of thing he'd expect in a rich town like this. Not unclean, but not as high up on the food chain as some of the other establishments they passed. Nondescript. It's exactly the kind of word that describes this place. It's obvious the blonde has been here before, for he flags a waitress down who's got nothing but smiles for the good-looking gentleman. Law's much more interested in the scar upon Riss' friend's face than whatever drinks he's ordering them. It's a burn scar, a year or two old judging by the pinching of the skin around the affected area. What kind of mischief has this man been getting up to in order to end up boasting such a scar? Well, gentlemen, you have my thanks for helping Ri in her time of need. It's not really spoken to them, even though dark eyes are looking their way. The tease has Riss rolling her eyes, jabbing an elbow into her fellow's side, prompting a wide grin to smear its way across his face. The ease of their interaction makes it clear they're more than familiar with one another. Law hadn't realized just how closed off and defensive Riss had been upon the polar tang until now that he has something to compare it to. No wonder she'd been unwilling to go any further than just rutting against each other if she'd been that cautious of his whole presence. The memory makes him want to smirk, but that is perhaps not the best thing to do when sitting across from the male that is most likely her best friend, if he has to hazard a guess. And where are my manners? I am Sabo, Ri's best friend and the Revolutionary Army's chief of staff. What? Law can't quite stop his jaw from falling open, no matter how hard he tries to prevent it, how hard he tries to stop his face from expressing his displeasure. His eyes snap over to look at Riss, who delicately shrugs her shoulders, turning her attention elsewhere to happily accept the fruit juice the waitress offers her. A glass of red wine is placed before the fucking Revolutionary Army's chief of staff, while the town's signature beer is presented to both Law and Ermin. Ermin, who is staring at the blonde male with something like awe and something that is unquestionably attraction in his eyes. I told you I wasn't with the Marines, Riss murmurs quietly, and no fucking wonder. A bloody revolutionary. They have to have some way of ensuring the silence of those around them, or of ensuring they're not overheard. Law highly doubts they'd speak so openly on this if not. Regaining his composure comes naturally, despite the internal turmoil of, what the fuck is going on with his life, every time he interacts with anyone who boasts ties to the Grand Line, or has been to the Grand Line, or has the intention of going to the Grand Line, it all ends up just like this. It all ends up with Law's life no longer making any fucking sense. Not being with the Marines, and then being an active part of the Revolutionary Army fighting against the Tenryubito are two very different things, Riss yaw. She grins, as if that's something to be pleased by, and Law turns his attention to his drink. A quick rune blurts out from his fingers as he scans the liquid, but there's been no sedatives thrown in there. Who knows, maybe this pub has connections to the Revolutionary Army, and this Sabo, the fucking chief of staff, second in command to Dragon the Revolutionary, the world's most dangerous man, plans to cart him off for God only knows what. It's cute how you think she's a full-time member. We're just borrowing Ri, before she goes off and joins my little brother when he sets out to chase his goal. His little brother? There aren't enough shared features between Riss and this Sabo character, so perhaps their parents remarried one another, and they're step-siblings. Still, Law will certainly be keeping track of this upcoming captain now. The younger brother of the Revolutionary Army's second-in-command would be worth watching out for anyway. That's he's also Riss' little brother, that he also has potential connections to Fire Fist through Riss. The thought has Law's mouth twisting. Well, if that is all, we should be on our way. We are late, after all. Sabo sets his finished wine glass down, stepping out of the booth and holding out a hand to Riss, who easily accepts the gesture, allowing her companion to help her to her feet. Fixing the fringe of her black wig, she smiles, offering him a tiny wave with her free hand. Bye, Law. Thanks for your help, and I hope we see each other again. Goodbye, Riss Ya. Parting on amiable terms was the best for. No, that would be a lie. The best outcome would have been Riss joining his crew, simply because she's got skills he has yet to find in another. Regardless, they'll discover this hockey business soon enough. He knows Ermin well. Which, come to think of it. Law shoots the heart pirate a look, and sure enough Ermin completely misses Law's silent question. Because he's too busy eye-fucking up the good-looking blonde who's staring them both down, face cold. Riss has already gotten to the door, though stopped to glance back and see what is taking her comrade so long. Still the chief of staff stares at them as if he does not feel the weight of Riss' eyes upon him, and when he speaks, his voice is cold. I'll be in touch. Well shit, so, Ermin was definitely eyeing you up. Looping her arm through Sabo's, and no, it's not an excuse to be able to feel his beating heart drumming onto her skin through the cage of his ribs, not at all. Riskua grins up at her best friend, whose cheeks pinken at her words. He was attractive too. Shame we don't have time to really explore that, Sabo muses, tipping the brim of his hat to the Marines they pass by. Riskua hides her smile behind her hand, trying not to think too much on Sabo's words. That's what she'd done with Law, wasn't it? They'd both found each other attractive, had both explored that attraction, but Riskua hadn't felt capable of continuing, of going any further. She doesn't regret that choice, but it does leave her wondering. Regardless, that's enough of that. They should be focusing on important things, like. So, that Traffa guy, hang on, he never introduced himself. Please, we're the Revolutionary Army. I looked up all the data we had on People Note here before we set off. We've had him noted down as a person of interest, simply because of his devil fruit. Just because he's managed to avoid getting slapped with a bounty so far doesn't mean he's slipped our notice. Huh. That makes a startling amount of sense. Scratching lazily at the back of her neck, Riskua huddles a bit more into her coat, stepping closer to Sabo. Law might have claimed it a nice day, but it has nothing on a nice day on Daw Island, never mind one on Melring. Anyway, Sabo continues, bouncing slightly upon his next step, and Riskua eyes him with blatant suspicion. Traffa guy isn't bad looking, is he? You don't want to get your hand down his pants, do you, Sabo? The blonde laughs, head thrown back and shoulders shaking. She can feel the sound rumbling around in his torso, genuine amusement evident. Nope, he's not my type, Sabo proclaims, but didn't he do anything for you? For a moment, she wonders if Sabo's psychic, then she weighs up the pros and cons of telling Sabo what had occurred. It's not that she's ashamed of it, but there's just some things that should be kept private. Sexual relations is one of those things, unless of course Law wanted it sharing. Until she knows that though, she'll keep in quiet. Maybe other people will have different views to her, but Risku is of the opinion that to mention it would be to overshare. Well, he was my type. Skidding to a halt, Sabo's head swings around to look at her in surprise, round eyes wide as he splutters, "Whoa, hold up, you have a type?" "Yeah, doesn't everyone?" "So, what's your type then?" Sabo asks, shaking himself slightly and beginning to walk towards the docks once again. Riskua falls easily into step beside her friend, jamming her cold hand into Sabo's pocket, wrapping her fingers in his in an attempt to thieve some of his warmth. Why the men in her life are always so warm, she'll never know, but if she's going to suffer through some winter islands, at least she has some way of not freezing to death. Sabo gives her hand a little squeeze, wiggling his arm free of their entanglement to wrap around her shoulders, pulling her closer to the delicious heat he gives off. Sorry, Sabs, my type is tall with dark hair, so unless you want to invest in some hair dye? And hide my golden locks? Never, he laughs, light and airy, so like the devil fruit he has consumed. Riskua watches him, warmth curling in her stomach, knowing this precious little golden nugget is her best friend. It doesn't matter that she's not in a relationship, not when she has this kind of goodness in her life. She doesn't need a significant other, not when she has her Sabo. Sabo and Ace and Luffy, they're enough. She'll deal with the sexual frustration if it ever hits, but given her reaction with Law, it's doubtful she'll ever be able to go the whole way with someone. Not unless she truly trusts them. What about tattoos? How do you feel about guys with tattoos? I've got a tattoo, Sabs. I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if that was a no-go. Beard or clean shaven? What's with all the questions? Maybe he just wants to compare tastes, to see if they'd find the same kind of person attractive. Riskua isn't sure. She doesn't mind if that's what Sabo wants to do, to discuss who they find appealing, what kind of traits they prefer. Just want to know if you're into beard burn or not. Giggling, Riskua rests her head against Sabo, letting him walk the two of them to the little boat that'd take them to their pickup point. She recalls the scratch of Law's whiskers against her cheek and chin, the contrast it had created against the smooth angles of his jaw. I don't think I mind either way, she concludes. Anyway, enough about my preferences, what about you? It's all in the attitude for me, I can't be doing with self-entitled idiots. Lying in the hull of the boat, the clear night sky stretched out about them. Riskua huddles a bit closer to Sabo. The thick blanket that covers them smells of him, and she's hit with a fierce longing to see the whole set complete, to have Luffy and Ace here too, to be lying beneath the flock of stars that dominate the dark sky above. It's a painful sensation. The only time she's ever felt like she's missed someone this much was when she left Melrine, when she stopped seeing her mother's face every day, when the visits from Shanks stopped, when Mihawk started only popping in once a year if she was lucky. I miss Ace and Luffy. The admittance comes out of her in a near-broken whisper. Sabo lazily opens one eye, and while he doesn't turn his head to look at her, his pupil is focused on her face. She must be wearing some kind of effective kicked puppy kind of look, because the blonde gathers her up in his arms and plants his chin down on her head, pressing her face into his chest. Maybe this is what it's like having an older brother, Riskua thinks. Only if Sabo had been her brother she's quite certain she wouldn't have trusted him with half the things she already has. There's something pure and wonderful in knowing they're best friends, in knowing the only ties they have between one another are the ones they create, the ones they allow, the ones they do not cut themselves free from. It makes her smile, lips tightening up, and while not a beaming grin, it's full of emotion regardless. I felt so lost when I first joined the revolution, Sabo confesses, arms wrapped around her back, and he's lovely and warm. Even though Ace left first, suddenly I was surrounded by like-minded people, but it felt like I'd never been more alone in my life. And it was hard. But I knew no matter what, and no matter how I changed, as soon as I saw you, and as soon as I see Luffy and Ace again, you'll never stop accepting me for who I am. And that's the greatest feeling in the world. Yeah, Riskua can see it, can see that being the truth. Even if Sabo killed hundreds of innocents, not that he ever would, she could never ever come to hate him. Be disappointed in his choices? Yes. Angry at him? Absolutely. But she could never stop loving him. I can't wait to see them again, and it's only been a few months. I don't know how I'm gonna last. You'll manage, I promise. Wiping the sweat from his brow, Portgas d'Ace slouches against the side of the Moby's railings, feeling the familiar burn in his mucintense exercise. Or lifting the provisions aboard, as it stands. Just because he's naturally stronger than most people doesn't mean he doesn't feel it, especially when he's bringing so much stuff aboard. Because feeding 1,000 people requires a lot of food, as Thatch constantly informs him. Still, it feels good to help out, to perform some manual labor. It kind of reminds him of his time on Dawn, where Luffy is right now. The little brat will be all on his own now, won't he? Well, not quite. He's got Makino, and though they're far from sufficient company, he's got the bandits too. Though it'll probably mainly be Makino keeping his head together. Of course, there's Garp and Hawkeye's visits too. Poor Luffy, having to face their shitty grabs on his own. Ace's heart goes out to the poor guy, but after that near miss with the hero of the Marines back on that island before Sabaody, well, it's every member of the ASLR for themselves from here on out. Ace is still in shock he'd managed to give the old man the slip, and now that he's with the Whitebeard pirates, Garp will, God have mercy, not show his face around here. Ace's heart goes out to his little brother, but he's in no rush to see the old man again. And as for Hawkeye's, where is Riskua? To his dying day, Ace will deny that his instinctive reaction had been to scream and flinch away. Whitebeard pirates burst up onto the deck at his unconventional warning of an intruder, but Dracul Mahawk does not move from his spot, perched upon the railings of the Moby as he is. Holy everlasting fuck, what is this scary as fuck asshole doing here? It feels like Ace's heart is running overtime, slamming into his lungs and making it hard to gasp for breath. What the Hawkeyes? Thatch, that's Thatch spluttering behind him, and Ace forces himself to focus. Because Dracul Mahawk, who is apparently the world's greatest swordsman, Ace had learned upon setting out, and it's no fucking wonder they could never beat him back on Dawn, has all but invaded the Moby. Answer the question, Portgas. Or need we revisit your childhood before I get my answer? Fuck you, I could beat you now, Ace snaps back, folding his arms across his chest with a frown marring his face. He's very conscious of the fact Hawkeyes won't attack him, if only because that would invoke the wrath of every single person on board, and Hawkeyes might be good, but he's not that good. From his face, the bastard knows it too given his frown, even as his eyes drill into Ace. Aware of all the people that are watching the two of them, Ace slumps slightly, unfolding his arms. He can't really not tell the man. He'd only ever kidnapped Riskua for training in their childhood, to ensure she was capable of protecting herself. Clearly he hadn't known they'd agreed to set out from their island on their 17th birthday, otherwise he wouldn't be here asking that question. I don't know, I haven't seen her since I left. He hasn't seen Sabo or Luffy or Riskua for a whole year and a half now. No, more than a year and a half, 20 months. Has it really only been 20 months since he set off? But when he considers it in the terms of not having seen his brothers, his best friend in that long, it seems like a century has passed. The monkey said she joined the revolution. Well shit, she's with Sabo then. Jealousy roars through Ace's limbs for a moment, until he manages to push it back. It doesn't matter then Riskua has decided to go work with Sabo until Luffy's old enough to set sail. Even if she wanted to join him on his little adventure as a pirate, it's not like she could find him. Or temporarily join the Whitebeards as she has probably done the revolution. After that single moment of envy passes, relief settles in Ace's gut. That's why there's no wanted poster, no sightings. She's actively working to stay hidden as a revolutionary, and she's with Sabo. His blonde brother will not allow anything to happen to her, and she will not allow anything to happen to him. They're safe with each other. Well, I've not seen either of them since I set off, Ace informs the man, watching his famous yellow eyes narrow in annoyance. He leaps from the side of the ship without a word, leaving Ace stood on the deck with 2 divisions worth of brothers, along with a rudely awakened Marco. Ace, what the hell was that? Yoi! The freckled male blinks slowly, worrying his lip between his teeth, because how could he tell his brothers about Riskua and Sabo when they're both clearly safer undercover? If the entirety of the Whitebeard pirates finds out about them. Well, Ace isn't gonna lie to himself. They're a nosy bunch. Still, these people are his new family, so maybe he could. No, Sabo and Riskua wouldn't be happy about it. Arg, trusting more people is hard. Ace, are you? That's the last Ace hears before his narcolepsy kicks in and solves the conundrum for him. A wake of water crests behind her and Riskua grins, wild and feral and full of pride. It flows beneath her feet, liters and liters of water, all reacting to each and every movement of her legs as she powers across the surface. It's taken months of training. Her legs ache from the constant movement, but she's got it all working. It's not perfect, there'll always be room for improvement, but Riskua is pretty happy with what she's got so far. A mixture of pure physical force on the same level as Geppo, and the spiritual force of armament gives her legs the same properties as inflatable armbands. Only, significantly steadier, as long as she doesn't stop moving. It's like ice skating, though nowhere near as effortless, given water has significantly more friction than ice. As Rescue rounds the corner of the underground lake, she tilts to a side, hand brushing through the liquid as she turns. Clapping from the shoreline has her straightening up, powering forwards until she makes the stumbling transition between water and ground. Well, you didn't fall ass of tea kettle this time, disappointing. Oh, I'm sorry, were you only here for a laugh at my expense? It's the only reason I ever spend time with you, Sabo confirms, holding out his hand to pull her up and out of the awkward landing crouch. There's a new scar on his wrist now, acquired on a mission 2 months ago, where he'd not been quite as careful as he should have been, facing down an enemies without testing to see if they had any training in hockey. He'd paid for it, almost losing his hand, and he certainly would have lost a fair bit of movement had it not been for Hack's quick thinking. When he'd arrived back at the base after that particular incident, Riskua had had a few choice words for her friend, and none of them were the kind she'd have repeated in front of Luffy. It's such a shame this technique needs contact with the water, it's far too much for me to risk, Sabo murmurs with a wistful sigh, looking out over the expanse of blue and sighing. Guess I'll just stick to flying. Now there's something I'd pay to witness, you attempting to fly. The blonde scowls, cheeks pinking in a way that indicates he's already had a fair few cracks at it, and that not one of them had ended well. I'll figure it out eventually. Sure you will, Sabs. Now come on, you've been away for nearly 3 weeks and I want to catch up. They make their way into the dining hall, arm in arm. Sabo's voice flows easily with the tales of his latest adventure, talking of his brief jaunt into the new world before a hasty retreat. It goes unsaid that Ace now sails upon the new world's ocean. They're both aware, but neither of them can afford to go and visit quite yet. It's easy to ignore the quiet chatter of everyone around them, though it remains a little surprising that so many of them wave to Sabo as he passes. He's a popular guy, her best friend. Lips tilting up in a little smile, Riskua adjusts her ever-present goggles with one hand, the other curling to bring her closer to Sabo. And your pirate friend sunk a marine ship over in North Blue. He's been slapped with a 25 million bounty. Oh, Law's got a bounty now? Sabo's lips twitch, eyes sliding away to glide over the variety of food on offer. You seem pretty close as pirates on rival crews can be. You know there are probably romance novels out there with that exact plotline. Coughing, Riskua stops completely, shaking her head as she stares up at Sabo with wide yellow eyes. What? No, I mean, Law's attractive, don't get me wrong, but I couldn't ever be with someone who'd so seriously rival Luffy. Conflict of interests. Good to know. Good tea, Sabo. What do you mean, good to know? Were you doubting me? Jogging the short distance Sabo has put between them, Riskua grabs hold of his arm, pulling him to a halt and staring up at her blonde best friend. He's smiling, that awful smile that says he knows something she doesn't, and that he won't be sharing. That's the most annoying part, that he's always so smug over whatever little scheme his nasty mind has concocted. Sabo. What's with the look? He doesn't flinch at her threatening tone, not like when they were kids and he was aware of just how childishly petty she could get in return. It's a shame she's trying to remain mature during her revolutionary time. Nothing for you to worry your little red head about, Ree. He actually has the audacity to pat at her wig-covered head, all but glowing with smug pride. It's nice to see him so relaxed, even if it is at her expense, though that doesn't mean she has to like it. So she kicks him in the shin. Ow, damn it, Ree. Snatching up a bowl of stew, Riskua makes her way over to a relatively unoccupied table, seating herself as far away from the others occupying it as she can get. After a moment's hesitation, Sabo joins her, a helping of stew in each hand and a bag of baguettes hanging from one wrist. He might not need to eat as much as Ace or Luffy, but attempting to keep up with them throughout childhood has certainly taken its toll. So why were you looking up the information we've got on Impel Down? Sabo whispers, tearing into one roll of bread and dunking it right into the broth. Riskua watches for a moment, frowning, before she forces herself to turn her attention to her own meal. What reason could I possibly have for wanting to know about the security information of the Marine's top prison, I wonder? The dry remark has Sabo's jaw snapping shut, though the grinding of his teeth is all because she's slurping at her stew. Damn it, you know I hated that sound. And we've already looked into it. We can't risk attempting a rescue for Eva from that place. That's right, Sabo was inducted into the revolution by Ivankov. She doesn't doubt they were friends. She hadn't even considered the queen in her own research, too focused on memorizing as much as she can of that place, just in case. I gathered as much, but I just wanted to know as much as I could, just in case. Please, I'm too sneaky to get caught by the Marines, Sabo insists, coupling it with a haughty flick of his blonde locks. The motion has Riskua smiling, even as her heart clenches in her chest. Because when it comes to impelled down, Sabo is the last one she'd be worried about. Pulling the brim of her straw hat, she's missing Luffy. What else can she say? Lower as they walk through the town center, Riskua shuffles a little closer to Sabo. Though one set of fingers are threaded through his, their joined hands are close enough to her hip that she can get at the daggers hidden beneath her sundress in a moment's notice. For, beneath the cover of Sabo's summer shirt, they've managed to acquire certain doents. All to do with corrupt Navy official that the Marines no doubt have no intentions of ever bringing to light. As such, the revolution will take great joy in spreading the truth and tearing into the Marines' credibility. It's not all about sinking ships. The more people who understand the taint of corruption that runs through the Marines, the more the population will not trust the Marines, thus making their jobs infinitely harder. Consequently, it will also make the revolution's job that much easier too. How long until you think they notice it's missing? Given that they've been checking in every hour or so to make sure all their confidential files are still present, I guess. A gunshot tears through the air in the exact second a bullet whizzes right through Sabo's skull, leaving little wisps of air spiraling out from the new cavity before it all reforms. Now, I'm gonna guess now, Sabo grunts, releasing her hand to take off in a run. Swearing, Riskua takes off in a sprint, her language worsening as the straw hat goes flying from her head. Of course, she hasn't run with a hat in so long that she's forgotten to slap a hand atop it to keep it in place. A trio of bullets pepper the ground by her feet and Riskua scowls, leaping into the air. 1 bound, 2 bound, 3 bound, nay of buildings before her, coming down rough on her right shoulder in a messy tuck and roll. In her defense, she has spent a few months trapped inside the revolutionary base, teaching concealment hockey and furthering her development upon the water skating technique. She's a little out of action, which is bad. Springing up, Riskua finds herself in the market district, surrounded by a variety of wide-eyed civilians and Marines alike. Well shit. A Marine den goes off and she has no interest in sticking around to listen to her arrest warrant being broadcasted over the whole Marine line to all those in the vicinity. Swinging up onto her feet, Riskua takes off, barreling down the street, shouldering her way past the few civilians that aren't quite quick enough to move out of her way. Her heart pounds in her chest, breath coming in sharp, efficient gasps, violently pulling the oxygen into her lungs as she sprints harder. From the corner of her eye, she can see Sabo leaping from rooftop to rooftop above her, keeping pace, before being forced to duck the swing of a sword from a Marine with wings instead of arms, and who's somehow wielding his sword from the crook of his left knee. Riskua stares to the point she misses the man in front of her, slamming right into him. They go down hard, Riskua leading with her elbows in order to wind the man she lands upon, but they're caught before they can make any true impact. Riskua grunts, pulling back and trying to wring her elbows free of the man's grasp, but pauses at the eyes that stare up in surprise at her own. There's not even a full second of eye contact though before a Marine makes a grab for her and Riskua rolls to the left, ignoring the surprise of the man she'd collided with. Her feet are quickly back under her and she takes a swing at the Marine, fist blackening with hockey. It impacts the side of his face, punting him away as civilians scream in panic at the suddenly violence that has broken out. Shaking out her hand, Riskua rubs her thumb across the knuckles as she takes off running again. A rapid glance up shows Sabo's still making progress, even if he's locked in pipe versus sword combat with the weird bird Marine. Is he some kind of parrot zone? It'd explain the fantastic coloring of his wings. Squinting at the red feathers, Riskua barely manages to leap to the side to avoid the next spray of bullets. Where the hell are they even coming from, and how are they firing so many at once? Some kind of cloning fruit? A multiplying fruit? Hell, it might not even be a fruit at all. Just incredible guns that backwater marines like these guys would never usually have access to. Yeah, probably a fruit thing. That's Riskua's last moment upon that road before there's a sudden blow slamming into her side and she's crashing through wood, the force propelling her straight through the wall of whatever building she's just smashed into. She bounces like a skipping stone, her back taking the brunt of the impact as she lands upon a bar table, sake cups exploding from the surface and dousing her in half-consumed alcohol. She lays there, just for a second, eyes squinted shut from the pain and muscles tense in an attempt to not find any other way of causing her body unnecessary pain. When that moment passes, she slowly preases one eye open, finding herself peering up at a poorly lit ceiling. And then there's a face hanging over hers, a very familiar one. Hockey flares out from her body, but everyone at the table is a known presence to her, like an old song with lyrics long forgotten in a tune that oozes nothing but familiarity. "Hi, Papa," Riskua groans out, peeling herself off his booth table and flying over his ruined round of drinks in order to re-engage the marine. Paradise really is the right term for this little patch of ocean. Exciting, but not to the point it's dangerous for any of the crew. Even for Rockstar, their newest recruit. It's why they're sat down for the traditional sake sharing upon the joining of a new member, even if Beckman hasn't quite made it back from his chores yet. Pouring out the rest of the bottle, Shanks reclines back into his seat. It's peaceful. No one here recognizes him as a Yonko, not in this little rinky-dink town that believes itself safe of pirates because of the overly large marine's presence upon its shores. Ha, idiots. Still, it means he and the rest of the red hair pirates get to enjoy their alcohol in peace, free of any hassle from the marines. So of course that innocent ritual between crew is shattered when a body comes crashing through the wall, landing smack dab in the center of their table. Of all the things, a body that's still breathing. Shanks leans over the young woman's face right as her eyes snap open. Even behind those god-awful purple goggles, he'd recognize those eyes anywhere. The quiet, "Hi, Papa," only cements it. Jaw popping open, Shanks can only stare as the figure that smashed right into their booth, out of the 34 others in the room, painstakingly rolls off of the tabletop and springs back into action, slamming a fist into the jaw of the marine that had just strode into the bar. He goes down hard, harder than an anchor in the ocean, and still Shanks can only stare. Because even with this goggles, that nasty wig, God, please let it be a wig, it's gotta be a wig, right? It's undeniable. That's his little Gully. His little Gully, who was this cute kid with little red curls and huge eyes and puppy fat cheeks. And now he's got this. Shanks lurches slightly just as Beckman slams the door open, looking ready to announce something before his eyes find the bleeding female in the room. So he found her too. Wah! Giving Rockstar no chance to finish, Shanks throws one arm, his only arm, over Usopp's shoulder, forcibly pulling the man even further in the direction of the fight, as if they're not all already watching the goggle-wearing girl take on the next marine to arrive. "Look, Usopp. Look, it's my precious little Gully." The meaty thump as one tiny, gloves fist punts the second marine right back out the Gully-induced hole in the wall echoes Shanks' statement, and he can only grin. That's his baby girl. Why is he just sat here, Gully? Leaping to his feet, the Yonko powers past Rue, long legs eating up the distance between him and his baby girl. She turns to look at him, statement eyes wide behind those obscuring goggles. Red hair or not, she's undeniably his daughter. They share the same face, even if Riskua's is formed with a softer brush. Arms, strong and with a slight tremble, wrap around his neck at the same time Shanks gets his one limb around his daughter, pressing her close to his chest and just breathing her very presence in. He can't recall what she smelled like before, but the scent of the ocean is almost overpowering. Just like her papa, setting out to say, "You're only 17. What the hell are you doing out here on the Grand Line?" Flailing in panic as the facts come crashing down on him, Shanks' head snaps around, looking for whatever crew she's ended up joining. Oh God. Luffy's not here too, is he? If his little Gully's too young to be on the Grand Line, then their anchor is far too young to be here. Only to have two small hands forcibly return his attention to Riskua's face, which is lit up with a wide smile. His little girl has truly bloomed into a gorgeous woman. "I don't have time to talk. Gotta finish up some business, but which way is your ship?" Sitting upon the railings, Shanks stares at the little boat that's hastily approaching, far too much wind in its sails to be natural. Hell, the air currents aren't going the right way for that boat to even be catching the wind. Throw down a line, Shanks yells, because it's been years since he last saw his precious little girl. And suddenly here she is now, popping up out of the blue, and he wants to spend as much time with her as he can. And to also find out why she'd been in a fight with the Marines. Shanks peers over the side of Red Force once again, only to flinch the sudden rising form of his daughter. She lands neatly on the railings, having physically kicked her way up through the air. Geppo, his little gully knows how to use Geppo. Papa, and suddenly he's got an armful of daughter, clinging to his neck, and she's so short but she's all grown up and his eyes are tearing up. Riskua, my little princess. He's grown used to his disadvantage, grown used to the own arm. But there are times when an intense longing for that lost limb hit him, and this is such a time. To be able to hold his precious little daughter as tight as he can to his chest. Well, he'll just have to make do. I've missed you. He's missed her too, so very much, knowing she was off living on her own stung. Even if he had Makino watching out for her, Makino and Luffy. For while the little boy with Captain Straw Hat isn't exactly the sharpest sword in the barrel, he's protective of what's his, that Shanks knows for sure. He's heard from Mihawk's tales whenever he visits Dawn. Riskua is Luffy's. His big sister, his first mate, his nakama. And Luffy is Riskua's. It's great his little gully has made such a good friend. And, speaking of friends, Shanks eyes the blonde-haired male that has climbed aboard, slipping onto the deck all the while fanning himself with the brim of his top hat. He's tall, a scar over one eye, and with Mihawk's short physical descriptions in his mind, Shanks can assume this is the blonde scrappy one, Luffy's brother, like Portgas d'Ace. Ah, this is Sabo, my best friend. Sabo, this is your dad. I heard. Funny, I was picturing a hawk-eyed swordsman when I heard that. The unsaid, you never mentioned exactly who your dad was hangs heavy in the air. Riskua tilting her head to a side with confusion painted on her features before she gives a slow shrug of her shoulders. Oh, that's right, I told Luffy and not you, oops. Watching his little girl's cheeks pinken beneath the heavy rim of those god-awful goggles, Shanks peels the eyewear off, met with the oh-so-famed Dracule eyes. Oops. Sabo, the best friend, parrots in disbelief. A comical scowl crossing his face and pulling slightly at the scarring around that eye. It looks like a doozy of a wound. Kid's been up to something dangerous. And while he can't exactly bar Riskua from chasing after her own share of danger. Whatever you're up to here, you're careful about it, right, Gully? She startles slightly, twisting around to look at him, sheepish smile on her face as she rubs gently at the back of her neck. That's kind of the reason for the disguise, she mumbles, peeling the god-awful wig from her head. And no, he doesn't dislike it because it makes her look so very much like she's actually Mihawk's daughter. No way, to nervously wring it about in her grasp. We have time for you to catch up, the well-dressed blonde finally states, breaking the awkward tension that has descended. A wide smile on his face as he looks between Shanks and then to Shanks' fellow redhead. If you don't mind having us aboard, Shanks-san. Well, he's unusually polite for someone roaming the seas. Dahahaha. I've always got room on my ship for my precious little princess. You'll have to sleep in the crow's nest though. The blonde grins back, offering a sweeping bow that looks terribly well practiced. How long can the two of you spare? We're a 3-day trip from Melring. At that, Riskua goes still, the warm smile steadily slipping from her face. Her companion cranes his neck to stare at her, but Riskua just shakes her head, worrying her lip between her teeth. Of course, while Shanks has had a fair amount of time to settle his grief with Rowell's death, has occasionally visited her tombstone as Mihawk no doubt also does, that's not a comfort Riskua has been able to experience. Even if we don't have the time, I'll be coming, she informs him slowly flexing the fingers of one hand until the white knuckles begin to steadily flood with color again. The blonde looks on with concern smeared across his features, taking a step closer to Riskua and instantly accepting her needy embrace of his person. It's like a punch in the gut. It's been years, of course his little gully has formed new bonds, has found people with whom to gain some measure of comfort. But to know she looks to this guy first before her own father. It stings. The journey to Melrine is filled with a tense kind of awkwardness. Sure, they interact, but the truth of the matter is, Shanks doesn't know his own daughter anymore. She's spent 8 years elsewhere. She's grown into this incredibly capable woman, intelligent and driven, and he's not had much of a hand in it, not really. Back then, it had seemed like the right thing to do. Even now, looking back upon that time, it had been the only sensible option. Raoul had been dying, hadn't wanted to cripple her daughter by forcing her to remain and watch her fade away. The Yonko can only imagine what such a thing would have been like. To see the person who'd been there since day one slowly disappear. To become weaker and weaker until they're suddenly just not strong enough to keep on living. Looking after Riskua himself had never been an option. It was just too dangerous. If it were possible to raise a young child aboard a pirate's ship, then Shanks'd have had Yasopp bring his little Sprague aboard. Hell, Shanks had only managed to grow to adulthood because the pirate ship he'd been on had been that of the Pirate Kings. It just hadn't been possible to stop Roger. It was why he gained the most impressive title in the world. No matter how the Tenryubito insist they're the greatest thing on the face of the planet. Shanks wasn't strong enough to face off against the entirety of the Marines though. Didn't have the devil's luck like his old captain had. Mihawk. He was in the same position. Hell, he was even worse off, not even with a crew to back him up. Plus, staying with Mihawk would have brought his baby Gully far too close to Marines, and it'd have only taken one look at her splendid red hair in the vicinity of his bounty poster, and well, Shanks remembers the hunt for his old captain's child. How viciously they'd killed mothers, babies and even unborn children just on the off chance that they'd be carrying Roger's blood. Shanks thought his captain's child a goner, long dead. Until just over a year ago. When a young man bearing Miss Rouge's name and his captain's face, minus the mustache of course, had walked into their little party. Shanks had known the moment he'd set eyes on the kid, the moment he'd stepped into the light of the fire, that his captain's blood lived on, despite every last effort of the Marines to ensure otherwise. To know the brat had grown up with Luffy and Riskua, he likes to think Captain would find that appropriate. Some things just come together thankfully, no matter how bad a hand the world tries to deal you. That doesn't change the fact Shanks is still struggling to get to know his daughter all over again. There just is no clicking instantly, no settling easily back into the flow of things. Riskua sits and she writes, and when Shanks asks what she's writing, she goes on to start using terminology he only has passing knowledge of, certainly not to the point that he fully understands what she's talking about. It doesn't mean he isn't the proudest Yonko in the Grand Line though, getting to learn all the results his little girl has been getting as she chases after her dream. Watching her skate across the ocean's surface, riding the waves and making it look effortless had been fantastic. By making sure she'd grow up somewhere safe, not only physically but mentally as well, had meant missing those moments. And while he wouldn't change that, it does hurt to know he didn't get to experience all this growth. Stepping out onto the docks of Melrine, Shanks tilts his head up to the sky, allowing the autumn wind of the summer island to kiss at his skin, ruffle through his hair. Beside him, Riskua still wears that damn wig, the one she'd insisted wearing for the duration of MMED back onto her head not long after they'd set a course. She's in the pretty sundress she'd been wearing when she crash-landed on their table, freshly patched and mended, goggles once again back on. She looks every inch a Dracule in all that purple and with that black hair. She's buried up on the hill, closest to the sky and sea. Riskua hums, an almost strangled sound in the back of her throat, and Shanks' eyes fly towards the crew, imploring that they give them some time. Sabo, yeah, come by in half an hour? I want to introduce you? Sure thing, the blonde gives a snappy little salute, hefting up the Den Mushi in his hands and disappearing into the little town. Perhaps he's even heading towards the restaurant where Shanks once introduced his little Gully to his crew. The kid certainly eats enough to expect that to be his destination. A hand works its way into a hold with his and Shanks tilts his head to look at Riskua. Not that he really needs to. He can feel the slight tremble in her fingers, can hear the slight hitch in her breath. Lead the way please, Papa. Can do, Gully. Riskua sits before the black grave of her mother with her legs crossed, elbows resting upon her knees. She doesn't cry, instead just reaches out, fingers tracing across the yellow embedded into the indented words. And then she begins to talk. Shanks learns more about his baby girl's past 8 years in that half an hour than he did in the 3 days above the Red Force. He listens as she talks about meeting Luffy, about how pure and sweet he is, how he's too good for this awful world and that she'll take great pride in being his first mate. He listens as she talks about Ace and Sabo, how one was a hothead too jaded to dare risk letting anybody in, how the other was a wild brat so determined to free himself of the shackles of being a noble that he started to pretend to be something they were not. Shanks gets to listen on how they developed as people, how they all became something so much better than what they were. He can barely picture the polite, well-mannered young man he met being a brat so full of rage he'd lash out at anything and everything. He can't see the happy blonde he's slowly gotten acquainted with these past few days as a child who'd cry in shame and denounce his origins. And while she barely speaks about herself, Shanks can see how much his baby girl has grown. She no longer gets lost in the fairy tales she dreams up. No longer focuses so much on the end result as she does the journey. She's learned how to really experience life with those boys, to pay attention to what's in front of her instead of getting lost in her thoughts and acting so passive. And she had been passive. Despite her drive, Riskua never really had any friends on Melring, had stuck to Rowell and Shanks and Mihawk and showcased no desire to explore. Too lost in chasing after whatever she could uncover regarding hockey that she'd not really considered just what she was going to do with that knowledge. Teach, protect, she hadn't even considered boasting about it, as young kids do. He remembers Monkey D, my punch is as strong as a pistol, Luffy. Hell, it was meeting Luffy that made him realize his own kid wasn't so normal. Too mature. While he wouldn't trade who Riskua is for anything in the world, it had made him second-guess a lot of their interactions. Papa? Startling at the sudden address, Shanks cocks his head towards his fellow redhead, disguised or not, only for Riskua to shuffle closer, leaning into his side with her head pillowed on her shoulder. I had an incident on Dawn Island. We were threatened by some pirates and, well, I'm pretty certain I used conquerors to knock them out. Shanks'd be lying if he said that didn't please him. Of course, conquerors isn't necessary to make an impact in the world, to really be somebody. But it's a highly valued trait. He's proud to know his little girl has it. Only, I've not been able to use it since. Ace has it too, but he's been able to train it, to use it. I can't. Frustration painted across her face, Riskua balls her hands into tight fists, gathering the material of her dress up in the process, the lilac fabric crinkling beneath the pressure. The mention of conquerors though, people dropping like stones, frothing at the mouth. His tiny hands, pushing at their sides, imploring someone, anyone, to wake up and help him. Even the animals, all dropping like stones, unconscious. Nothing respond, they never respond. Time blurs together, he loses track, all up until, hey boy, join my crew. I'm probably not the best person to talk to on Conqueror's Gully. My own was a special case, I couldn't turn it off. Riskua stares up at him, yellow eyes wide, the purple goggles now pushed up to rest atop her head. All I can offer you is to keep working on it, that's what Captain made me do. His little gully sighs, a deep, accepting thing, and Shanks wishes there was more he could do for her, he really could. But short of calling up Whitebeard for advice, he'd rather bite off his own tongue. There's not really any other conqueror he can think of that'd be willing to talk to Riskua. None that he'd allow near her, that is. It's okay, I'll figure it out on my own. That's kind of the dream, after all, Riskua muses, tilting her head back and grinning up at the sky. Soft footsteps to the left indicate that, as promised, Sabo has come along for his introduction, and Shanks knows it's time to get up and head to town, but first. I know I wasn't there for most of it, but you're grown up well, Riskua. Then she does start crying, smile upon her lips wobbling away. Nodding to Sabo as they pass by one another, Shanks smooths his shirt down, grinning. Hopefully, with that out the way, things'll run a bit smoother. Which means it's time for a red hair pirates party. I can't believe you wrote a book. Sabo, please, stop. But all these stories, and they've all got these morals and this feel-good factor. They're fantastic. Sabo's grinning, prodding her teasingly in the side, and Riskua tries to elbow him away, only he's not going anywhere. They're once again sat up to a table within the Revolution's base on Baltigo, a half-finished breakfast spread dominating the table before them. It's been a month since she last saw her father, saw him again for the first time in 8 years. It had been nice, if a bit awkward, because before, she'd been a child, had grown knowing that he would be there, that no matter how long he was gone, he'd always be back, would always come back. Only now there's nowhere in her life for him to come back to. Riskua's home is now no longer a summer island nestled dangerously close to a calm belt. Her home is no longer a physical thing. Home is Sabo, is Luffy, is Ace. Home is people now, the 3 people she has spent near half her life with, had her developmental experiences with. The people she'd experienced genuine terror with, genuine happiness. She's had a life, no, she has a life with those 3. And no matter how much she loves Shanks, loves her father, he wasn't there for that. He isn't home, and now, he cannot visit home either. Not unless he ends up joining Luffy's crew or something. Because her home is in those 3, and as long as she's with one of them, then she will never feel homesick. Mentally snorting in amusement at the very thought of Shanks ever joined Luffy's crew, Riskua refocuses her attention on the book currently in Sabo's grasp, holding out her hand demandingly. The blonde doesn't hand it over though, instead sliding it into the deep pocket of his jacket with a grin. He's lucky it's such a small book, the one with just text. Riskua is aware, given that Mihawk had told her on one of his many visits, that some artist had drawn up images to match the tales, but she's never actually seen them herself. The children's tales, it's just been something she did back when she was a child, back when she was trying desperately to cling to her old life as well as juggle this one. Now she embraces this life, arms thrown wide, and there's only thoughts to the past on if it can help her. She is Dracule Riskua now, temporary revolutionary and future Straw Hat pirate. Look, there's new bounty posters. Koala slaps 2 down upon the table, right on top of Riskua's half-finished plate, prompting the redhead to grimace. She'd still been eating that, damn it. Peering down at the official don't, Riskua's eyebrows climb up in surprise. There's a blurry photograph on the center of the sheet, but to anyone who has seen her disguised self, it is clearly her. Purple Lady is stamped across beneath the image, with a 40 million reward upon capture, dead or alive. Whistling long and low, Riskua sits back, frowning slightly on the rather generic name. Until she spots Sabo's own poster. While the picture is significantly better than hers, he too has been lumped with a rather uninspiring nickname, Blue Gentleman. The epithet is at odds with the image, given Sabo had been captured mid-swing with his pipe, and the snarl on his face looks nothing like that of a gentleman. The brim of the top hat covers his eyes, and perhaps that's why they've been lumped with the nicknames that they have. After all, Riskua's dress had been rather ladylike in that incident. 45 million and 40 million, Sabo muses, one hand rubbing at his chin as he mulls over the number. Not too shabby, if I do say so myself. They must not have overheard you talking to your father, my lady. Zaw, call me that again and I'll punch you. Alright. Alright. Sabo holds up his hands in surrender, a teasing grin on his face. Riskua holds her glare for a second before her own face crumples into a cheery smile. Because the blonde irritant is right, 40 million isn't bad at all. Riskua? Pausing at the sound of Hack's voice, Riskua cocks her head back to look at the fishman, pursing her lips. Yes. Dragon-san wishes to see you. Oh, your concealment hockey is ingenious. I do believe it's time we put it to the test. To say Riskua is nervous would be an exceptional understatement, because it's not every damn day you end up on a mission with the boss, and just the boss alone. Riskua, she's not quite sure how to handle it, because for all this is Dragon the Revolutionary. He's also Monkey D. Dragon, Luffy's father. And she's not quite sure how much he cares for her darling little brother. Enough to entrust his safety to Garp, but there's a huge period of time between that moment and his rise to fame as the world's next big threat. What had he been doing? Had he really not been capable of looking after Luffy? How old was Luffy when he was handed over to Garp? How long did Dragon get to spend with his newborn son? What happened to Luffy's mother? They're all unanswered questions, all information she doesn't know that sits in the back of her mind, a heavy presence, and she doesn't dare to open her mouth and voice them. She doesn't have any real reason to, other than personal curiosity. After all, Luffy probably doesn't even know he has a father, even less that it's the guy she and Sabo are following around after. Would Luffy even care anyway? She already knows the answer to that. It's a stupid question really, because obviously Luffy doesn't care. She knows her dear brother. He's gotten by just fine with only her and Sabo and Ace. They are his family, even Garp, for all that he's a no-show for all but a few days of the year. Luffy's content with his life right now, and then he's setting off to become a pirate. He has no real desire for a father. After all, what's there to miss when you've never really experienced it in the first place? It leaves her unsure of how to even act around Dragon, that's for sure. Which is why she sat up to a generic bar top, steadily plowing her way through a bowl of rice and chicken, mixed in some kind of local sauce. She doesn't have a clue what it is, other than the fact it is unquestionably tasty. They'd arrived on this rather beautiful island via the Revolution Express, the fastest ship in the Revolution's clutches right now, and Riskua doesn't even know the name given to the mass of land she currently walks on. Only that Dragon had insisted it just be the two of them, because this is a stealth operation, until it's not, whatever that means. Riskua has a terrible sinking feeling, but given that she's not being trusted with the objectives of this mission until it's actually underway, something about not being able to spill the beans if she was captured, her gut instinct is probably right in this case. Adjusting the strap of her goggles, Riskua checks the wrap of concealment she has cocooned herself in once more, nervously looking over one shoulder. Knowing you're a wanted woman with a bounty sitting pretty on your head certainly messes with your paranoia levels. Listening to the conversations occurring around her, Riskua grimaces as she realizes exactly why the city is looking its very best. A Tenryubito is visiting. She hasn't been so damn close to a world noble since the fire back on Dawn, and she has absolutely no desire to be near one now. So why? Choking on the rice in her mouth, Riskua drops her chopstick in shock, staring right ahead without really seeing anything. It's a struggle enough to keep hold of her concealment. Everything has slotted into place, all at once. This is how Dragon does it. This is how he becomes the world's most wanted man. They're going to do something to the Tenryubito here. It's obvious, so painfully obvious. She's not sure what, but it all just fits, clicks into place. It's also why she couldn't be told about it at the get-go. If the Marines had caught her upon arriving at the island, then Dragon would have been able to continue without her. Smart. Only now that she's had time to gather information and take a stab in the dark about what they're moving, now. Flinching slightly at the sudden Dragon hanging over her shoulder, Riskua pushes away her unfinished rice, no longer hungry. Right, okay. I mean, yes sir, can you fill me in on what we're doing now, please? Every inch of this ship seems like an unnecessary luxury, dripping in wealth that is as horrendously cold as it is aesthetically appealing. It's shallow, a shallow way to live life, and Riskua feels sorry for the children that are born into such a world. They know better, but after becoming adults, then it is no longer innocence, just ignorance. They see all that goes on around them, and yet they still believe themselves above it all. It's sickening, it has Riskua cringing, but all the same. She's very unsure about being here herself. This seems an awfully big job for someone who hasn't even been a member of the revolution for a single year yet, but you're the only one with the capabilities. As Dragon had so plainly put it, she is the only one with the capability to hide not only herself under concealment, but another being too. Even if she cannot concentrate on anything else in the process. Not even walking. They are both on deck, huddled in a spot Dragon has specifically chosen, as no other person aboard the boat would have need of this section of the ship for several hours at least. They're waiting, hidden behind the many gifts the ungrateful Tenryubito has been presented with upon her trip to the island that Riskua still has yet to learn the name of. She doesn't know if she wants to, given that what they're doing here is going to greatly displease the Tenryubito, the world government, the Marines, and probably a few other groups too. It's probably best she forgets all the information she can on this. Dragon already has counter plans in place. If neither of them contact a fellow revolutionary within 24 hours, they're to assume both Riskua and Dragon have been captured, to abandon Baltago and for Sabo to take up leadership. In a moment of loquacity out of place with Dragon, the revolutionary leader had admitted Sabo was the best choice to run the show should anything happen to him. That upon Dragon's death the blonde would be the one to inherit his will. Riskua is not quite sure what that means, though the words are nagging. Maybe it's a will of D thing? Other than Dragon believes Sabo's drive to see change outweighs his inexperience. She rather agrees in all honesty. the blonde would do a wonderful job. But nothing is going to happen to either of them, so that is a moot point. We're really kidnapping a Tenryubito, Riskua hisses under her breath, flicking her gaze towards Dragon from the corner of her eye. It's the first time since she met him that she can really see Luffy in this man. Or this man in Luffy. Whatever. The point is, Luffy would punch an Tenryubito if they harmed his friends. She knows that like she knows oxygen lingers in the air she inhales. Luffy knows the consequences of such an action, but he'd damn well do it anyway if he felt he needed to. Dragon feels this needs to happen, and no matter what kind of potential disasters he's going to pull down on them, they're going to do this thing. Perhaps in the original storyline it hadn't gone smoothly, perhaps it had. Riskua is determined this will happen without any significant loss, namely that of her life or Dragon's. It's only now, acknowledging the fact she will threaten the life of this ignorant woman if things get tough, that Riskua can acknowledge just how much this life has changed her. In the before, something like this would have been unthinkable. But there is no black or white in this world. Good is defined by one's standards, and Riskua can contemplate committing several terrible acts if it means those close to her won't suffer. If she had to choose between killing an innocent person and saving Luffy's life, there could only be one answer. It doesn't mean she won't be haunted by what she'd do, but it's now a matter of what she can live with. If it comes down to the lives of her loved ones or her morals, well, Riskua is a selfish being. She cannot live without those she loves, refuses to even consider it. This place has a dangerous way of getting you overly attached. She is a valuable source of information and her brother has so helpfully demanded half the marine forces remain upon the island while he stays longer than planned. We will not receive another opportunity like this. What's her name? If we're kidnapping her, I'd like to know who I'm running away with. Dragon's grin is wild, several shades more deranged than what she's seen Luffy pull off. Her younger brother has time to get to this level of crazy. No sane man decides to take on the entire world, after all. Lyra, she is a year your junior. Riskua nods, trying to picture this young woman who no doubt looks down upon the world, who sees them as nothing more than the S of the earth. It's a struggle, the only thing that's really sticking in her mind is that pompous haircut. Then Dragon drops a bombshell. She happens to be the daughter of the Tenryubito that Dawn was cleansed for. She happened to be the daughter of the man that, if given the opportunity, would have hurt Sabo. Perhaps it's stupid to associate such a thing to the present, a storyline that never occurred, a plot point discarded. But it was this young woman's father that was the cause of so much death and destruction and panic. If the Tenryubito feel anything for their family at all, then she hopes this is going to hurt that asshole, like he hurt so many of them. She almost lost Ace and Luffy in that fire. Let's do this. 3 hours later, finally, the world noble and her little entourage arrive upon deck. Wearing that criminally ugly fishbowl astronaut suit thing, Lyra the Tenryubito turns her nose up at all the marines that surround her, as if they have served her a personal insult. Lilac hair, near enough the same shade as the dress Riskua had worn days ago, gleams in the light, pulled up into the atrocious hairstyle. For someone younger than Riskua, well, the disguise's redhead isn't sure what she feels. She knows what she doesn't feel though. She feels no compassion for this girl, and she is a girl, too immature and ignorant to be a woman. And what is about to happen to her? Maybe there is something wrong with Riskua, because she doesn't flinch at the idea of what they're about to do. What is the discomfort of one, when what occurs here can potentially help and save thousands, in this world? The end justifies the means is a concept that must be applied. Because not standing up for yourself here, it means being a doormat, just going with the flow of the world. Unlike in the before, the flow in this word is dangerous, deadly. In this world, death isn't the worst thing that could happen. Riskua is crouched on the beam of the mast, sucking her lip in between her teeth, watching the little procession make their way across the deck. She just needs them to walk beneath her, she needs to time this perfectly. There's no vice admirals here, the one that had been accompanying these Tenryubito staying with the male that remains on the island. They were so sure nobody would dare to stand in the way of the Tenryubito, never mind actually attack one. That meeting up with another vice admiral escort would be happening out at sea. Or rather it should be. But Dragon didn't exactly plan on allowing the boat to meet up with their new marine escorts. Not with the Tenryubito still on board anyway. The group comes closer to passing just beneath her, and Riskua inhales, adjusting the hold she has upon her daggers. One step more. Two of the Marines are chatting to one another and Riskua wonders if there are any Cypher Pole agents disguised among them. There are none that are ringing a bell in Riskua's mind though, not on appearance that is, so hopefully the answer is no. The group finally passes beneath her and they're in position. Riskua drops down to meet them. She's punted two off the side of the boat before their oh so honored guest even realizes her entourage is under attack. Dragon has appeared now, and three more Marines are soaring over the side of the boat before Riskua realizes what has hit them, though she forces herself to think no more upon it. Instead, she shatters the Tenryubito's bubble encasement with a hockey-infused fist, forearm wrapping around the taller woman's shoulders and pressing the edge of her dagger to the woman's jugular. The remaining Marines freeze in disbelief and Dragon takes the opportunity to relieve the ship of their weight too. "How dare you? Don't you know who I am? The Tenryubito cuts herself off, choking in surprise as Riskua's blade nips slightly at her neck, a bead of red blood slowly trickling down to rest in the hollow by her clavicle. The girl's probably never suffered anything worse than a paper cut before, a very different kind of wound than what can be created with a dagger. Riskua takes that moment to slam the hilt of her other dagger into the base of the girl's skull. She goes down hard, unconscious right away, and Riskua hastily collects her fallen form in her arms. The remaining Marines on deck are only just starting to realize what is happening, still staring at Dragon, at her, in blatant disbelief. Riskua thinks nothing more on it though, instead making for the side, leaping over with their abductee still in her hold. The Marines bellow for her to stop, but that doesn't last too long, meaning Dragon must be taking care of it. Riskua hits the water, hockey swirling around her feet, and she abandons all attempts at concealment in order to focus on not drowning. It's past midday now, the sun is starting its descent in the sky and Riskua heads away from it. There's a fair bit of ocean she needs to cover before meeting up with the revolutionary force that's going to be waiting for them. The girl in her arms feels far heavier than she should and Riskua throws her over one shoulder, one arm wrapping around her legs to keep the Tenryubito in place while she uses the other one to balance herself as she goes skating across the ocean's surface. She rolls with the waves, salt water spraying up the material of her pants, and she tries to focus on that sensation instead of what's running through her head. She can't ignore it though. Kidnapping is wrong. But this one person compared to the hundreds of thousands the Tenryubito have stolen throughout the years. One person taken prisoner to help end so many worse crimes. It's a black mark Riskua can live with. After all, it's not like she hasn't already killed a man to protect her loved ones. She's not exactly got a clean slate right now. What's one more mark upon it? Riskua has running for 5 minutes, her legs burning from the sheer force. She's left the Tenryubito ship well behind now. She can't even see it anymore. She's been getting faster and faster, feet swift, cutting through the waves as quickly as she can. The only noise is the occasional whistle of the wind and her own panting breaths. She has no idea if or when Dragon will be catching her up. She'd been told to pick up Lyre and make a run for it, as fast as she possible can. 5 minutes turn into 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. Her legs have long since passed the burning sensation. They cramp instead now, shooting pains that have her once smooth movements stuttering. She's almost fallen thrice now, having just recovered at the last second, and she's also almost dropped her passenger 4 times as well. In all honesty, she's been seriously considering just dropping her for a while now, the weight of the Tenryubito almost growing too much. It's a blessing she's not some great big fat woman, because then Riskua really would have been in trouble. Not to say she would actually drop the girl. Dragon would not only grace her with a frown of disappointment, but then the girl, Lyre, she has to acknowledge this as a person too. No matter how dreadful an individual she is, would die. So, despite the pain, Riskua soldiers onwards. It's just as she's about to start her second half hour upon the ocean that she spots the ship, recognizable by the triangular red flag that flutters about nonchalantly at the very top of the flagpole. The sight of it inspires just enough motivation in Riskua for the redhead to complete that last stretch of distance, salvation in sight. There's a resounding boom just on the horizon, back the way she came, and Riskua leaps up towards salvation with 4 good kicks of Geppo. She collapses down on the deck, not even bothering to throw her begrudging passenger away, instead just crumpling atop her. Groaning, Riskua cannot even find the strength to lift her face from the cold wood of the deck. Everything hurts. Every last scrap of energy she has is going into sucking in more oxygen for her aching lungs. Lungs that feel as if they've been scraped raw with ice. Feel like they've been burnt and charred. It hurts, and there's black spots dancing across her vision. She's pushed herself too far, Riskua numbly realizes, squinting against her darkening vision, but it's no good. Waking up in the medical bay is never a fun experience. Having to remain in the medical bay because she strained her legs to the point of muscle tears is even worse. That, even with the top medics of the revolution doing their utmost best to help her, she has been forced to remain in said medical bay for 10 days just about tops the experience off. There's no visits from Sabo because he's out on a mission of his own, though a blatantly uninjured dragon had appeared by her bedside not long after she'd awoken for her side of the story. As soon as the rehashing of that had been over, Dragon had nodded, promptly thanked her, then made his way to the door. He'd stopped by the frame though, turning back to look at her with a rare smile, something soft and proud, blooming across his face for a mere second of time. My son chose a talented woman to act as his sister. He'd disappeared before Riskua could think to ask for clarification, to inquire if that statement had been the revolutionary leader's way of roundabout acknowledging their family connections to one another. He's not appeared in the infirmary since though, so Riskua hasn't exactly been able to get her answer. Groaning, the redhead presses the heels of her palms into her eyes, just thankful she can do that much. You look like you're at the end of your rope, Koala muses, taking the seat beside her bed, crossing one leg over the other, ankle to knee. She's not smiling, her expression tense, and given what Riskua knows of her past, it's no wonder. After all, they have a Tenryubito stuffed in the basement. One of the people that had slaves, took people and made them into lesser beings, nothing but property. It's not even a surprise that Koala's unhappy. Especially given that Dragon has put her in charge of looking after their guest. Sighing, Riskua runs her hands down her legs, gritting her teeth against the pain that spikes through them. Because by God does that hurt. How is our guest? Riskua asks, attempting to change the subject. It's not even a graceful change, not a covert one. It's almost Luffy levels of heavy-handed, but Riskua does not want to talk about how very little she's been capable of doing trapped in this sickbed, as she is. All she's been getting is paperwork that can be delegated off on someone else. Which sucks, but she's so bored that it's almost a good thing. Almost, because paperwork is still paperwork. By God, Riskua cannot wait until she becomes a pirate. There'll be no paperwork other than what she wants to do for her hockey studies then. On that topic, she's certainly going to be a lot more careful about using her hockey now. Apparently, she can run out of the hockey she's been using to perform the water skating technique just like you can armament. Now she just needs to see if she can increase her hockey levels some more. It is willpower, after all. If she can increase that, then consequently, her hockey should increase too, shouldn't it? Of willpower. So there has to be some kind of correlation. She needs something to note all these ideas down on. Well, the uppity attitude is gone. Koala begins, elbow on her knee and head resting against the back of her fist. She tried getting Farron to let her out, saying she'd tell the Marines to not kill him and he can instead serve as her slave for life. What an idiot, Riskua murmurs under her breath, rolling her eyes as Koala nods along in agreement. Farron of course just laughed in her face, and then one of his underlings backhanded her for daring to suggest she'd get them all killed. She's been quiet since. I think she's starting to realize exactly what situation she's in now. One her status cannot get her out of, one that ensures she's actively disliked. She needs a wake-up call, that Tenryubito they've got hidden in the basement. She wonders how the girl would react knowing that Dragon is a descendant of D. The Tenryubito are told to fear them, are they not? Perhaps that would get her take them all seriously. Or maybe she'll remain in her delusions a little longer, who knows? Given that the world at large believes Saint Lyra died in the explosion that earned Dragon his title as World's Most Wanted Man, there isn't exactly going to be a big rescue plan for her here. That pompous hairdo had collapsed now that there's no products to sustain it though, Koala admits with a grin. As that is one of the statement styles for the Tenryubito that visibly marks them as different from everyone else, it's no wonder the former slave girl is grinning. What are we even going to do with her in the end? It's not exactly like the revolution can let her run free after we get the information we want out of her, Riskua points out, chewing on the edge of her lip afterwards. It's true though, what can they do other than keep her prisoner? I think Dragon-san wants to see if we can educate her. It's said as if the thought is a distasteful thing, as if it's a vegetable that's proclaimed a good idea but the actual stomaching of it isn't easy. Still, it makes perfect sense to Riskua. Is that not what Hack is attempting to do with Arlong, who they're still holding prisoner? But, Arlong had been influenced by Fisher Tiger before his capture at the hands of herself and Sabo. This Tenryubido has 16, near 17 years of false ideals to work through. To overcome behavior that has been ingrained in her since childhood that the way she acts is not only acceptable but expected. Dragon is taking on a monumental task here. Or rather, he's giving the revolution as a whole a monumental task, because she doubts their glorious leader has the time to devote himself to that particular cause. Which means she's probably gonna get pulled into this too. Wonderful. Once she's given the go-ahead to get back to work from the medical team that is. Koala? Do you mind fetching me a notepad and pen, please? I've got some ideas to scribble down. She might as well try and remember all she can on human conditioning than she can while she's at it.